What is going on, everyone? This is Miles Dompier, and welcome to the 102nd episode of Xbox Chaturdays. Today, I am stoked to be joined once again by my good pal, host of XNC, the legendary Colteastwood. Colt, how are you doing on this fine, beautiful, blessed Saturday morning in the greatest state of all, Washington?
Gonna say you have to say Washington State, where the sun shines and the people are happy. Yep.
That's right. Nothing but just super tan people like myself roaming the streets. Nothing but sunshine. 300 days of the year it's sun. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How you doing, man?
I'm good. It's been a crazy week, but still having a really good time.
Exactly. We have a lot to talk about. It's been a week. This is Xbox Chaturdays. This is an Xbox-focused show. Most of the people tuning in, joining us, are probably in the loop with what's been going on with Xbox this week, the state of Xbox, but we have a lot to cover. So we're going to be talking about, obviously, the controversy surrounding Redfall's frame rate. We're going to be talking about Ubisoft Plus launching on Xbox. We're going to be talking about some video game delays. We're going to be talking about some upcoming Xbox games coming to Xbox Game Pass. We're going to be talking about Joseph Staten leaving Xbox. We're going to be talking about our impressions of Minecraft Legends, Ghostwire Tokyo, and so much more. But before we get into all of that, Colt, for the lovely folks who maybe don't know, hit us with who you are and where people can find you.
My name's Colteastwood. I'm a super old vintage gamer from long back in the days before smartphones. And yeah, I do a YouTube channel about mostly Xbox gaming and mostly console games. And I'm super happy to be here with Miles. Miles and I have met in real life, which is, in this day and age, especially the past few years, has been a very, very big rarity. But really happy to be friends with Miles, and he's been on my show. I've been on his show. So, yeah, you can find me on Twitter and YouTube at Colteastwood if you want to hear the sultry voice.
Oh, yeah. That's what the ladies tune in for. I'm sure your YouTube demographics show a huge spike in the female demographic.
A huge spike in like the 76 to 80-year-old females. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, man. Yeah, so we did get to meet in person. That was awesome. Last May, I visited Washington State. I grew up in Washington. I lived near Seattle, went to college in Seattle, and then I lived in California for a while. 8 years, moved to Denver, lived there for a couple years, and then recently I moved back. But one of the main reasons I moved back is last May I visited Seattle, or actually it might have been 2 Mays ago, whatever. I visited Seattle, and I just remembered like how much I love it, how much I love the atmosphere, how much I love the city. And so talked to my wife. We both work remotely, and we're like, let's just move back. Like we can be anywhere that we want to be, so why don't we just go back? So it's been nice. And it's cool that I know people like Colt in this beautiful state. So some quick housekeeping before we get into the show proper, before we get into the meat. First off, huge shout out to everyone tuning in live on youtube.com/Miles Dompier. I see Yodani in the chat. I see Mr. Joanna Dark, Mo B, a lot of returning regular faces. Yodani, who always mods like a boss. It's Yodani's birthday. Give him a quick shout out because he's popping in the chat on his birthday before some festivities to say what's up. So shout out to you. Shout out to everyone joining us. If you haven't joined already, Xbox Chaturdays has a Discord as well. So I will drop a link in the chat. I think the link in the description is probably expired because I forgot to change it, but I will update that. So be on the lookout for a new link. Merch. Xbox Chaturdays has some merch, y'all, so you might see it at the bottom here, but Xbox Chaturdays, I got a sick death metal shirt that I'm really excited about. That's available. Get that. Member shoutouts. So, for the supporter tier, we got Curie Cosmos, we got Rick Zion, Buddy McClure, Neon Demon, Rumberto, Happy Cloud Gamer, Jacob Novik, Rachel, Sinful Sadie TTV, Orange Rhino, Jigga J, Cryptopsy, James, Shine Films, Derek Griffin Jones, V Simcoe, Anthony, Assassin, and last, but certainly not least, literally my mom.
Awesome. That's so cool.
In the loyalist here, we have Tom Whiteside, John Grasula, Patrick, and Nick W. And extra special shout out to our amazing producers, Matt Valdez, Yodani Quezada, Hargeet Chani, and Mr. Joanna Dark. Quick note on the channel members. We're doing our second members only Q&A this coming week. So if you're interested, be on the lookout for updates there. We're going to do something a little different. Tried the first one last time around, and anyone in the loyalist and producer tier is going to be able to jump on the stream and ask their questions via voice or video. So if you are interested in that, hit that join button for more deets there. Audio listeners, huge shout out to you. I know this is a video focused show. It's a live show. I appreciate the interaction, but I also appreciate everyone listening on their own time in their car or wherever to get, the latest and greatest news in Xbox. And I keep getting emails that are showing like the rankings for Xbox Chaturdays, where we sit on podcast services. And it's awesome. We're tracking really well. And again, I don't think I give enough credit to the audio.
Tell people what platforms on demand you're talking about. That where if
we got Spotify, we got Apple Podcasts, we got Google Podcasts, we got Good Pods. Pretty much anywhere that you can consume podcasts, we are there. So appreciate all of you. Colt, all right. I want to start this show doing something a little bit different because it's been a big week, and obviously, if you've been on social media, there's been a lot of negative energy surrounding Xbox. There's been a lot of harsh criticism of the Xbox brand, the Xbox platform, leadership, decisions that they've made. Anytime there's an Xbox fumble, we go through the same saga where we dredge up the past and we highlight all of Xbox's failures and shortcomings. And it happens time and time again. So we're going to be talking about some criticism. This is going to be a very honest, genuine episode of this show. And we're going to be talking about a lot of negative things regarding Xbox. But before we get into that, you are an Xbox-focused content creator. This is Xbox Chaturdays, which is an Xbox-focused show. So when I get a new guest on the show, one of the first things I always ask is, why do you love gaming? And because that is something that I am most excited to hear people talk about is, why do you love gaming? Why are we here? Why are we creating videos? Why are we having these conversations? Yeah. So because you've been on the show multiple times, I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. I want to know why you love Xbox, because obviously I've seen you be critical of Xbox this week. A lot of us have been. But before we dive into the meat of that, hit me with why you love Xbox, because I think we're all here for, a similar reason.
I think it's the best platform. It's the best value, and it offers the most. There's some things that the Xbox doesn't get or doesn't have or doesn't scratch the itch on, but the value and just the way we get our games and the options and flexibility and choice we get is really amazing. And I'll take a small example. The Xbox One launch was probably the worst console launch next to the Wii U, where it just didn't land for most fans. But in the middle of me finally deciding to buy an Xbox One, I realized there is a lot about this console that I think is so incredible that people just aren't getting. Like I had the Dumb Connect that had to come with my Titanfall edition. And the voice commands were so great, like just everything I could do. And I realized the platform was really good. So I started making that folds right into where I realized the Xbox One is not horrible like everyone thinks it is. It's pretty dang good, especially with the first 2 years. The games were better than what PlayStation was offering, but that wasn't the narrative from the media and fans. And so I started making these videos going, look, I'm an analytic type person. I'm a graphic designer and a producer. I can try and make a presentation. So I started making videos about why I think the Xbox One is not better than PlayStation, but why it's so great and can keep up. And that's kind of where it went. It took a little while to get going, but I'm in gaming because video gaming scratches the itch that I don't get from watching TV and movies. I feel like I'm in a big adventure and it does it all, and I'm controlling everything, and it's a great immersive escape from everything. And I have some, adult attention deficit disorder, probably. I mean, I've self-diagnosed. Video games feel really great. They're a great way to hang out on the couch and unwind, playing with my kids, playing with my friends. And I don't get to talk about that at work. No one cares about video games. So I'm here. I have a podcast. I go on great podcasts like Xbox Chaturdays. Like, this is a place where all of you that are in the chat, you're here because you love gaming. At work, at your job, no one cares about. They're like, oh, I used to play video games. I used to play Mario back in the day. You're here because you love to talk about the passion of gaming, even when things are going low with 30 frames.
Ooh, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the chat, because I do want to give a huge shout out to this chat and this community in particular, in the Xbox Chaturdays Discord, because I see a lot of folks talk about how that is like their favorite place to talk about games. And this chat every single week, rarely do we have to worry about moderating. rarely do I look over in the chat and see just a nightmare of people fighting and arguing and slamming each other. Even when people are disagreeing in this chat on this show, I am always impressed by how civil and how genuine everyone is. And that's huge for me. Like, that is a huge catalyst of why I'm here and why I am very particular with how I address things and how I approach things online, because it's important that we all can, even if we don't agree on something as trivial at the end of the day as video games, that we can have a conversation and respect each other and not make it this, this slight against you as a person fundamentally because we disagree, because that happens way too often. When I look at Xbox, the thing that sold me on Xbox from the jump, and the reason I'm still so excited about Xbox, is the promise of what can be, the promise of the future, because that's, as I've played video games and as I've played games like the Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and I see what video games can be, I've been chasing that high basically ever since.
On your tweet, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was the launch SNES Zelda, right?
Yes, that was the SNES.
Yeah, that was a magical game because it harkened back to the first Zelda instead of like the second one. And I remember back in 91 or whatever, 92, whenever that game came out, I thought, man, this looks like a cartoon come to life. And that's the first time I'd seen something like that.
Just bright, beautiful colors. And ever since then, I've been just chasing that. And when Xbox launched and I first played Halo Combat Evolved, that was another one of those moments where I'm just like, this is what video games can be. This is this transformative moment where it's delivered an experience unlike anything I've had before, and it's increased the scope and scale and immersion in a lot of ways. And ever since then, when I look at Xbox, when I look at their teams, when I look at their games, more recent example, Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is the reason I love video games. It is a wholly unique idea. It focuses on fun. It focuses on mechanics. It focuses on empowering the player to play exactly how they want. That is why I love video games. Stuff like Grounded. They are continuing to, despite some of the flaws, they have games that just are the reason that I love video games. And so, that's one of the main reasons I love Xbox is, obviously things like Xbox Game Pass, the console hardware, the innovations in technology, those are exciting because of what they can mean. And so that's one of the reasons I fell in love with Xbox, is because they represented the future of gaming in a lot of ways, because they were the new kid on the street, the underdog, and, they got clowned on a little bit. But they still, in a lot of ways, delivered on that, and they still have innovated in ways that cannot be understated. Xbox Live, online gaming on the console, we owe that to Xbox. And so there's a lot of reasons that I do love Xbox. There's a lot of reasons that I primarily play on Xbox, despite having a PS5, despite having a Switch, despite having a PC. Xbox is my preferred platform, and I don't think there's anything wrong with anyone having a preferred platform, even if it is an Xbox. But it is important to be able to celebrate and criticize when need be the platforms and what they're doing.
Yeah. When you talk about the game that like won you over and you're chasing the dragon, as they say, right?
Exactly, you're chasing that dragon, brother. Yeah.
That discovery feeling where the game like just poured over you and you fell in love with what could be. And the strangest thing is, my game that did that to me was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's weird. A good one. That's a good pick.
This ties into what you said about Zelda, because I played the first Zelda on the NES. And I remember back then I was like, I'm not interested in that type of game. I didn't really like that kind of fantasy type thing. And my friend let me borrow it. I'm like, this is really good. And I played it until it was done. But there was something about Grand Theft Auto. Stay with me for a second here, chat. But when I was playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, I'm like, this is like a nerdy RPG dressed in gangster clothes. And I loved it. I'm like, it's trying to hide all the RPG elements. And I was just kind of getting back into gaming in full force. And I could see what Rockstar was doing. They were hiding all the nerdedom of like, big open world
dragons and broadswords. Which, hey,
I can level up my stamina by going to the gym and running
I'm all
around.
about that,
It was so great. And that was the game that just like completely had me like hooked on gaming. And I've been chasing that ever since. Love it.
Yes, and we all have those moments that we can point to. The moments that made us fall in love with games. And video games in a lot of ways, we have fond memories of how it makes us feel, like those moments. And I've seen a lot of people, in spite of the news, in spite of the developments that we're going to touch on, like Redfall being 30 FPS, a lot of people have said, oh, you shouldn't look at that, like how you shouldn't have an opinion based on how you feel. And I don't know where that comes from, you know, until we're all replaced by AI. I think feeling is a fundamental part of being a human being, because video games are a very emotional thing. We connect with them in a way that we don't connect with movies or television. And we connect with movies and television on an emotional level as well. So I don't think it's, you know, fair for people to say you shouldn't have an emotional reaction to a video game announcement. I'm like, no, I think you should. I think that's perfectly healthy. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes we get a little mean.
I mean,
with
we can talk about you shouldn't have an emotional reaction to news on a game, like bad news, or I mean, I guess you can, but you got to be very careful about how you react to bad news.
Sometimes we get a little heated. It gets a little ugly.
It's
but
okay to be excited. Like, you could cry when you see the Tears of the Kingdom gameplay reveal. That's fine. I mean,
let's go. Yes, tears.
You, right?
Tears for Tears of the Kingdom. All right, let's get it. I got to give a quick shout out to all the amazing people joining us live. If you are watching the show, having a good time, hit the like button, share it out. We have a lot to dive into. I want to welcome Christopher Davis, who has become a supporter of the channel. Appreciate you. We got a super chat from GameSeeker M, who says, hey, Miles and Colt, ready for some Xbox chat? Oh, yeah, we got some stuff to chat about. Mr. Joanna Dark says, should publishers allow more transparency when they allow content creators or media to cover a game? Should we push for that change in coverage? Okay, I'm going to put a pin in that for now. We will circle back to that because I want to get to one other part of my, you know, positive initiative at the start of this episode is to, you know, I want to talk about why we love Xbox. And before we jump into the news proper, I also want to ask, what video games have brought you joy recently? What video games are you playing right now that have just tickled your little heart?
Ghostwire Tokyo. I'm glad I waited. I'm glad I waited to play it on Xbox because, one, I pay for Game Pass, and why would I buy the game when I know that my investment toward Game Pass is going to bring it to my preferred console? And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And I figured when the game was first shown, I'm like, oh, I might like that because I love the animation of the first-person like hand movement that you get in like even a game like Battleborn or Overwatch.
Battleborn, yeah, shout out.
Battleborn was a cool game. I was actually one of those people that kind of kept playing it after no one was playing it with a couple of friends, and we were like, no one's talking about it, so let's just enjoy this without worrying about what people are going to say. So Ghostwire Tokyo has been a really nice surprise. Really enjoying it. Looking forward to another game coming out in like 1 week that also has first-person combat that we can't talk about. So yeah.
Yes, I will. I'm gonna. You know, I don't like being that guy who's like, oh, I'm playing something that I can't talk about. But yes, honestly, one of the games that I am playing right now that I can't talk about. You like being that guy when it's just
you and me in party chat.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, but on a live show, nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. Oh, look at Miles has a game, dirt. But there is a game that I am playing that I cannot wait to talk about. I've been having such a good time with it. And it's exactly what I'm in the mood for. Can't talk about it right now. But a couple things I do want to shout out.
Yeah, I got to hear what's been tickling your gamer.
This isn't a game that I played, but you brought up the Tears of the Kingdom trailer. Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I know this is an Xbox show, and people are like, 720p, 25 frames per second, and we're going to be talking about Redfall at 30 FPS. So I'm aware of who I am, okay? I am. All right, I'm self-aware. But, man, that trailer hit so hard. Oh, I haven't felt that amped and jazzed about a trailer since the Hellblade reveal trailer.
Jazzed even?
Jazzed. I've watched that trailer 7 times. 7 times at the very least.
Really?
And every single time I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like, oh man, they're doing it. They're because I was worried that, you know, Tears of the Kingdom would be samey, I think, like a lot of people, because it's the same map. It's a lot of the same mechanics. It's the same art style. So I was worried it would be kind of samey. And we've seen people, as they always do, say, "Oh, it's just DLC," which
same map. Like it's the same.
It's the same map from Breath of the Wild. It takes place a few years later. They've obviously added a lot of stuff, but there are locations that are exactly the same. They look different, but they are the same location in this world. They did that
in Crackdown 2, Miles.
That's right. Yeah. So that trailer, it's a masterclass. If you haven't watched that trailer, that is how you showcase a game. My God, like even again, I was excited. It's Zelda. I like Zelda, but I was, I going into that trailer, I wasn't that amped necessarily about Tears of the Kingdom. I knew it would be good, but that trailer made me feel a very special way. So huge shout out to that team. That is a perfectly edited. The music hits. Every element, every aspect of that trailer hits. Ooh, that's been making me feel good. I've been playing Halo Infinite, Colt, pretty much every single day. And if you asked me 6 months ago if that would be the case, I would say nah. I think I'm pretty good. Like, I'll jump in and play randomly with friends here and there, but I've been playing Halo Infinite pretty much every single day, getting a few rounds in and having a good time. I love the new map. I love the new seasonal progression. I love the match XP. It feels good to play Halo right now, and I think that's, important to shout out because I've been very critical of Halo. We all have been very critical of Halo's, post-launch support. And it feels good to have, a compelling reason to play Halo every day. So I've been doing it, baby. Let's go, Halo.
All right. Good old Halo. I've kept it installed. I just need more people that. Well, I've got like Hargeet in the chat is always saying, "Come play Halo with us," and I'm like, "Oh," and I give him some excuse. I need to do it. Hargeet needs to learn how to twist the arm a little hard. He's too nice. He's way too nice.
Hargeet is incredibly nice, like one of the nicest, most generous people in this community consistently. So shout out to him. Play some Halo with him, Colt. Damn it. All
right, I will. Sorry, Hargeet. Love you, bro.
All right, Colt, let's get into some news here. The first thing that we want to talk about, one major piece of news this week, involves some unfortunate information surrounding the basically long-awaited follow-up from Rocksteady, and that's Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. There were some reports previously from Bloomberg that suggested that, it's not coming in May. It's probably coming late 23, maybe even 2024. And this week, it was officially confirmed that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has been delayed out of 2023 to February 2nd, 2024. So in a message from the team dropped a message that read, quote, "We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work on getting the game to be the best quality experience for players. Thank you to our amazing community for the continued support, patience, and understanding. There is so much more to share in the months ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in Metropolis next year." So Rocksteady's last console release was Arkham Knight on June 23rd, 2015. They did do Batman VR in 2016, but it's been over 8 years since their last major release, arguably. So Colt, how are you feeling about this delay? Was this a game that you were excited about particularly?
I was super excited for Suicide Squad, like big time. Like I couldn't wait, thought it was coming very soon. And then when they showed the Crackdown 4 gameplay, everyone was like, oh man. So I got really bummed about the monetization or the live service based, looty shooty and fresh and fruity thing.
Yeah, baby. Give me the big numbers. Colorful gear, big numbers.
Yeah, give me all the numbers and all the calculations. That lowered my excitement, but everyone was bagging on the game, and I was looking at the gameplay going, Crackdown 4 with, characters from the Gotham's, series I've never, or whatever they're from the DC series that I don't even know who they are. I'm like, I'll still play that. But people who had big expectations, I just thought, if you're going to do anything from Rocksteady, why aren't you doing another Batman game? Gotham Knights happened, which is still a good game. That's kind of where I'm at. I liked Gotham Knights. I was like, this game isn't that bad. It's pretty good. And then Suicide Squad, I'm like, why didn't they just do a single player, 15-hour campaign game that you could play in co-op? But the problem is, I don't want to get too far ahead, but when you said they haven't made a game in 8 years, AAA games now take at least 6 years.
Yeah.
No less than 6 years.
For a big
now we're
major
in a
release.
situation. Yeah. And now we're in a situation where 6 years ago, the live service thing sounded like a good idea because in 2016, Destiny was popping. Destiny 1 was still popping off. And they start building this game and they're chasing the dragon with live service games, which is a hot concept in 2016, 2018 era, right? And then you start to realize, oh man, in 2020, let's just say that in 2020, people are sick of live service games. and Rocksteady is in full sprint making a live service game, and they watched what happened to all the other games that are floundering, and like you're at the point of no return. Am I close?
That's an important piece of information and context, is that video games do take a long time. Video games take a long time to make, and as the scope and scale and fidelity and features and mechanics and expectations from players grow, because you have somebody who comes out with a game that changes everything, and people are like, I want this. This needs to be what every game is. And so you have teams that are working on a game, and they can't do that. They're already 3-4 years in, and to completely change the core gameplay loop, to change the core experience, you don't, again, that would be another 3, 4, 5 years to do that. So I think a lot of people, when they saw this gameplay, and I'm glad you mentioned Crackdown 4, because that is my first thought when I saw this gameplay. I was like, yo, the new Crackdown's looking kind of fire. Like, it doesn't look... Yeah. People have a very high expectation from Rocksteady because they've hit time and time again. People consider games like Arkham Asylum, Arkham City to be some of their favorite games ever. So that's a huge expectation, and this is a big departure from that. This is a very different style of game. So it's not that. You have people who love those games, want them to keep doing that. They come out with something that's very different. It's not what you want. It's a games as a service co-op title with some kind of obviously Destiny inspiration applied to it. And like you said, when that was, when they were deep into development, that was hot. That was it. Everyone wanted that. Marvel's Avengers, baby, let's go. Everyone was chasing that dragon, chasing that right. What could be. So when I look at this delay, like, I would have played it in May, and maybe it would have been fine, maybe it would have been bad, maybe the balance would have been wrong, but clearly, based on the lukewarm reception from a lot of fans, I think they want to make sure that even if they can't fundamentally change what the game is, that when this game comes out the door, that it's strong, it's polished, it's tight for what they were trying to do. It hits. And I think if some people don't connect with it, then they can just say, well, we put out a quality game. Even if it wasn't something that you connected with, the people who do connect with it can, because it's a tight, polished experience. So when I look at this delay, that's what I think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be changing anything fundamentally. REverse, prime example. REverse was delayed by almost a year. I remember playing the open beta for Resident Evil REverse, which was this weird PvP deathmatch Resident Evil thing, and saying, oh yeah, wow,
I forgot about that.
This is bad. And I don't throw that around casually. Like, I don't just say that. I know people are very hyperbolic.
Just to get people riled up.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, it was one of the rare times where I played a game and said, this should be canceled. This shouldn't come out the door. This is fundamentally not an experience that anyone's going to connect with. And then it got delayed.
What's the state of it now?
It was DOA. They delayed it by a year. They dropped it, and then nothing really changed outside of some graphical changes. They added a battle pass, but pretty much within 2 days, the player base was gone. People, again, tried it and moved on because it wasn't an experience that anyone wanted to engage with. I don't think that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to be that situation, but I do think that if you wanted the single-player narrative experience from Rocksteady, that this won't be it. But as a Crackdown 3 apologist, hey, I'm fine with that. I can live with that.
I like Crackdown 3.
Give me some.
Crackdown 2.
Crackdown 2, one of the best co-op games ever.
Seriously?
Also, not that
everyone hates Crackdown 2. Crackdown 2, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I drove over zombies for hours, laughing my head off.
Yes,
the game was so fun.
You can be a great co-op game and not a great game overall. And so that's where games like Resident Evil 5 fall. Yeah, that's where games like Crackdown 2 fall, where if you got some co-op, beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, as long as they don't use it as an excuse, but as far as Crackdown 4, like, I know people are upset about Suicide. We'll move on from Suicide Squad, but they're mad about the lore. Like, oh, Captain Boomerang doesn't use a gun, and I'm looking at Captain Boomerang jumping around and shooting in the air and slamming down. I'm like, Captain Boomerang looks fun. That's what I'm worried about. But I'm not like a purist when it comes to those characters who I've never heard of until this game came out, because I'm not like that deep into the comic characters. So
I will say, based on what we saw in that gameplay showcase of the story beats look like they're going to hit on the way that you want them to. I don't know how many we're going to get. I don't know how consistent that's going to be, but the scene when we had evil Flash, basically grabbed by Wonder Woman's lasso of truth and basically said, like, how do we save you? How do we break this curse, this possession from you? And Flash basically says, like, not quite with tears in his eyes, but presenting the weight of the situation, and says, you have to kill us. You have to kill all of us. And like that moment for me, even as I'm not a huge DC fan, I'm not a huge superhero fan, generally speaking, but just from a narrative presentation, that hit in the ways that, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City have, where you have the heavy narrative beats. So if they can give those consistently, maybe there is going to be a good balance between the dummies like me who just want a dumb, shooty co-op game and the people who want a compelling narrative experience, because that you can do both. It's hard. It's an incredibly hard balance when it comes to co-op and narrative, but we've seen games do it. We've seen games like Destiny kind of set the tone of how you can deliver a compelling story with multiplayer as the focus as well. So I believe in Rocksteady. Again, so far Rocksteady has not given us a release that we should have any concerns of the quality of the game. But again, I'm a big co-op fan, so maybe I'm being softer on it than some.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to change your world. It just has to be an enjoyable game. You have to feel like you got your money's worth. But maybe for $70, I'm sure for $70, people are expecting the big, epic, completely memorable test of time Arkham series, something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I have a feeling we'll have a lot of fun with it, but we'll say, oh yeah, it was really great. It was really fun. But you're not going to look back on it like, remember that one time we got to play Suicide Squad? But yeah. But that's it.
Exactly. That's it.
That's Suicide Squad.
That's Suicide Squad. Another big announcement in the Xbox camp this week was the release of Ubisoft Plus on Xbox consoles. So it feels like over a year, maybe even 2 years, we've been talking about the possibility of Ubisoft Plus coming to Xbox. And much like EA Play, there was some speculation that Ubisoft Plus could potentially launch as a bundle with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So after some speculation, after some anticipation, it has dropped on the console, and we now know what it looks like. So Ubisoft Plus on Xbox is $17.99 a month and brings a catalog of a bunch of Ubisoft titles: Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and much like Xbox Game Pass, they do the day and date releases. So their biggest games come day and date with Ubisoft Plus. Some folks have pointed out that Ubisoft Plus has more games on PC than the console version, and you have to pay for the more expensive tier to access the games on console. So that's an important note. But overall, you get Ubisoft Plus and their entire library for $17.99 a month. Colt, I know you're a big fan of Xbox Game Pass. So how are you feeling about Ubisoft Plus?
It's kind of different to ask me because I'm pretty sure I own or have played every Ubisoft game that I've ever desired. And if I went and looked at the catalog, which I did briefly while you're talking, there's a lot of games that I haven't played because I might not really care to. I'm not going to pay for a subscription to kind of try those out quite yet. But the cool thing about Ubisoft Plus that people don't give it credit for is all the new games, because Ubisoft used to put out at least 2 big AAA games per year. They're pretty close to that. And so that's a pretty big, let's see, $18 times a whole year is probably around $250 maybe. That's my rough math. For 2 big games, you're not saving a lot of money, but Ubisoft Plus is perfect for the person who has never gotten around to try something like Origins Odyssey or Valhalla and Extraction and stuff like that. But I'm one of those guys that it's probably not for me. I said my 2-minute piece about it, and then I'll move on. Like, because I would not gatekeep someone and say, don't do it. It's not worth your money. I ran the calculations. It doesn't have enough value. And the Metacritic numbers. So I don't know. I think it's just another great thing. EA Play, Game Pass, and Ubisoft Plus are all there on the console if you want an alternative to just buying games outright.
It's again these subscription services, because we have a lot of people look at Game Pass and look at PlayStation Plus Essential, Platinum, Ultra, or whatever subscription service and say, well, that's not for me. I've already played a lot of these games.
Sure.
But I think you bring up an interesting point, and probably the most important point is I think these subscription services are ideal for people who are jumping into gaming as a new player. Like they're seeing stuff like Xbox Game Pass get talked about. They're seeing games like Assassin's Creed get adapted into movies and whatever multimedia, and they're like, I want to play these. And then you have Ubisoft Plus, where you can play all the greatest Assassin's Creeds and Far Cries for one low monthly price. And you say, okay, that's interesting. But if you've already played them all, it's not that compelling. It's, again, you get day and date, which is important. And if you do love Far Cry, if you do love Assassin's Creed, if you're excited about Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, maybe you say, you know what? Yeah, I did the math. Me paying for this every month. Maybe I'm trying to work through the Assassin's Creed backlog before the new one comes out. And it's cheaper than buying all these games. But again, for me, it's too expensive. $18 a month is more than I want to spend on Ubisoft's catalog, considering I'm already paying for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate at $15 a month. I'm already paying for the Nintendo Switch Online. I'm already paying for PlayStation Plus. It's too much. It's just realistically, it's too much.
It's not that bad if you're paying for other subscription services, because all of us here have at least 8 services we're paying for.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Spotify, Disney Plus, Amazon, Xbox Game Pass. Like, I'm sure we're that's all normal, but we can all agree that $18 is too much. Like if they said $15, you'd be like, okay, but that extra $3 every single month is more expensive than most subscription services. I can't really think of many subscription services that are in the $18 range. Most of them are around 10 to 12, maybe a little more than that, aren't they?
Most. I think Netflix keeps climbing up based on which model you have. So that might be one that's up there now. But again, Ubisoft Plus is basically saying we're a better value than Game Pass, is the messaging that they're presenting to the Xbox platform, because they're saying our service is worth $18. Because essentially they're saying it has to have more value. Otherwise, why are they charging more money for it than Xbox Game Pass Ultimate? And for me, I don't think that's the case based on what my needs and based on the eclectic nature of Game Pass with third-party titles from other publishers and indie games as well as first-party. So it is weird that it's $18. I think that's a little steep. I want to touch real quick on the possibility of this being bundled in with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. There were people ahead of this saying, yeah, it's going to be bundled with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate just like EA Play. And I was like, no, they're charging $15 a month for it. It's not going to be just a free add-on for Xbox Game Pass, because Xbox can't really justify that. That being said, do you think there's a possibility where there's some bundles down the road that make it maybe a little bit cheaper? Maybe if you bundle Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and Ubisoft Plus, it's only $10 a month. Do you think that's something we could see?
Thought of that. I was thinking Xbox would just pay them to fold it in with a EA Play and Game Pass. Just give them a huge check and say, look, we're gonna get people into your service through Game Pass like EA Play does. But I don't know. I don't know if you could bundle it to bring the price down, but I didn't realize that they were trying to compete against Xbox Game Pass with right? I don't know.
And again, like $18 in the grand scheme of things is not that much money. When you look at all of the games that are in that library, and when you look at the thousands and thousands of hours and all the time that goes into making a game, from a business perspective, you can say $18, that's a steal. That is an absolute steal for all of these games. And yeah, if you haven't played them, I think it is a great deal, and it is a great introduction. And
it says 164 results, which I think is 164 games, which is a lot of really great games. But Xbox Game Pass, if you pay $9.99 a month for just the Xbox console games, you get like 400 games or 350 games or something.
Yeah. So again, it's maybe not for us, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad deal. Like, I'm trying not to be dramatic when I look at a subscription that's not for me. Like, this isn't for me. But I could see someone looking at this and saying, yeah, I'm stoked about Assassin's Creed. Somebody turned me on to Far Cry or whatever it is, and I want to get caught up. I don't want to necessarily buy every single one, and I'm excited about Skull and Bones or whatever it is, and I just want to play that day and date. And so maybe there is, and maybe there will be an audience. But I'm curious to see, if it rolling out on Xbox gives it a big boost. Because EA Play's been very happy about being bundled with Xbox Game Pass because, like you said, they get that boost. They get that automatic subscriber boost, baby, so they can point to the millions and millions of subscribers they have on EA Play.
True, and of course, then there's the pour over of microtransactions because people have easier access to your games. They're more apt to pay for extra monetization stuff for things they want. These are all things that people want to pay for. These are all things that people want to subscribe to. You know, if you want Game Pass or you want Ubisoft Plus or you don't, it's okay because nobody has forced that or gate or boarded off content. You know, there's no game in Ubisoft Plus that you can only play if you're a Ubisoft Plus subscriber. And people have to understand that this is the way forward to give people that option. You can always buy every game outright. But if you want to subscribe and pay $18 a month for Ubisoft Plus and you want to dip into all those games at once, maybe it's a better idea for you to buy Assassin's Creed Odyssey on sale, spend 40 hours playing it, and then wait to pick up the next game that you wanted to play on sale. Or you just want to pay $18 a month and just play as many of them as you want, on and off at your leisure, right? Like, there's no reason for anyone to complain about.
Super chat from Danny Passion, who brings up an excellent point. We haven't touched on this yet, but I think an important distinction with Ubisoft Plus is that Danny Passion says, don't forget about the day one release of DLC included. So yeah, one cool perk of Ubisoft Plus that is important to note is you get the like premium edition of their games on day one. Where we look at Xbox Game Pass, and Xbox Game Pass, you typically have to spend extra money if you want the deluxe edition. So you get the base game, and then you have to pay $30-$40 for the premium edition. So essentially,
all DLC,
you get all the DLC,
all expansions.
So
that's cool.
That is cool. So there is an audience for it. Again, it kind of depends.
What people don't think about is you could pay $18 a month and experience for the entire month the full version of Assassin's Creed Valhalla and all of its expansions and DLC and all of the extra, cosmetics, right? And then you could unsub. And for $18, I got to play a $100 version of Valhalla. And maybe some people do that, but
exactly. I mean, the hope is that you just forget about the sub and stay subscribed forever. But
like my gym.
Pain. Oh, damn. Don't call me out like that, bro.
I self-shame myself, but my arm's still I'm still messed up, unfortunately. But
you lifting too hard, bro?
No, I dislocated my shoulder about 3 weeks ago playing games out with some younger people.
That's right. You made the mistake of going out into the real world. I remember you up in the hospital bed, just all beaten because you went and played games in real life. Colt, what's up?
Yeah, I'm just bummed because I thought, like, when I used to get hurt, like 3 days later, I'd be like, man, it's better now. But now at this age, it's like, my arm fell off. But what's next on the news? What's next on the news docket?
Well, while we're talking about that, I do have to say, I had a similar situation a couple of years ago where, I started skateboarding again, and I was stoked, because I skateboarded growing up, did a lot of skating for a long time, took some years off, and then I came back to it when I moved to Colorado. I'm like, yeah, let's go. I'm getting back into skating, boy. So I had a few weeks where I was tearing it up, getting some skating in, and then I was bombing down a hill, ate it super hard, and completely, displaced my collarbone in 3 places.
When was this?
This was 2 years ago-ish. So now I got a metal plate in here. And so I was out of commission, couldn't work out, couldn't exercise for a long time. And then finally the last probably year, I've been able to actually, lift weights without having this disgusting crack and pop from the metal plate, sliding against the bone. So yeah, it sometimes to go outside, it hurts.
You have to go in there with a ratchet and tighten it down once in a while.
So basically it's a metal plate on top of the bone. And then there's these wires there's bolts connected underneath to the bone. And they basically used essentially fancy string to slam that down and pull the plate down.
Who did your hardware surgery? Was it
MacGyver.
Tim Allen from Home Improvement?
Tim Allen and MacGyver tag team.
There's some Wrigley gum wrapper wrapped around your... I'm sorry, Miles. I remember when you tweeted that you're getting back into skating. I'm like, you are a fool because you're going to get hurt.
Yep, and sure enough. So I have been skating, but I'm a little gun shy to get going fast now.
Were you gleaming the cube, bro?
Gleaming the cube.
Let's move forward.
Let's move on.
That was an early 80s reference. I'm sorry to all the young people. Go ahead, Miles.
Hargeet Chani with first shout out to the 240 amazing people joining us live. If you're having fun, talking Xbox, talking video games, hit that like button, share this out. If you're new, subscribe to the channel. We are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Hargeet Chani says $18 covers PC, Luna, and Xbox, and you get all the DLC. It isn't bad. The numbers is where it would make sense for it to be bundled in Game Pass Ultimate at no additional cost. Wait, it isn't the numbers. Okay, so yeah, it is. Like we touched on, it is overall, I think, a really good value for some players, and I think that's totally fine. I think it's important to have more options in the subscription space, and as people see subscription services be successful, we're going to see more and more of them. Can't wait for Capcom Plus. Can't wait for SEGA Ultimate. Can't wait for... If there's justification for it on a business perspective, it's happening. Square Enix Elite, it's coming. They're all coming. Paris says, Halo is better than Gears. Paris, why you got to troll? Paris has become my biggest troll on Twitter now. Paris Lily, love him. But
what do you mean become? He loves to rile people up and with a big smile on his face.
You know what? I'll say it once again, live on air. I like Gears generally more than I like Halo. I think Halo Combat Evolved is definitely better than Gears 1, but I think that Gears 3 is better than Halo 3. I've said it once, I'll say it again, and I'm not afraid to say it, all right?
Wow. Man, I just can't really weigh which one is better when you talk about those games like that. But I'm a huge Halo 5 fan. Like, I really loved that. Halo 5. No, I did actually like Halo 5. I like Gears 5 a lot, even more than Gears 4. I actually like the new Gears more than I liked Gears 3. I went back and played Gears 3 again a couple years ago, and I'm like, this doesn't feel nice like 4 and 5 do.
Yeah, 4 and 5 feel really good. I love them both. I love them both, okay? That's the most important thing here, all right?
Yeah,
Paris.
Do we love Paris?
Come on, come on,
man. Paris. That's what we need to really figure out.
I do.
Do we
love
tolerate
Paris.
him or do we love him? It's a difficult relationship.
I do love.
It's great.
All right. Super chat from RRD who says, Miles, you got to do a show with Neo Game Spark. I agree. I need to get him on for sure.
Oh yeah, Neo's awesome. Paris says Gaz got E3 canceled because he didn't want the smoke. There was a long-running joke that him and Gaz were going to fight.
Duke.
And there was going to be like Rocky 4. He was like, better get him a step ladder.
Let's do Gaz versus Paris at the next Creator Clash. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Gaz is going to have to up his weight class by like 75 pounds, though, I feel like.
And wear pumps.
Yeah, Gaz is going to have to do some lifting, all right? It's going to be a massacre otherwise. One more super chat from Goldshell, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Goldshell says, Sega Plus with Angry Bird perks. Let's go. That's right. The news that Sega is potentially looking to buy Rovio, the developer of Angry Birds, for $1 billion. So that mobile space is still important to a lot of publishers. And it's sparked some conversations about, is Sega trying to make itself a little more sexy, a little more appealing for a sale? So what do you think, Colt? We'll touch on that real quick. Do you think that Sega buying Rovio would make them more enticing for a juggernaut publisher like Xbox to say, all right, Sega, we see you. We see what you're working with. Yeah,
we put a little flair on.
We got that mobile market now. We got Activision on deck. We got our Call of Duty mobile. We got Candy Crush. Let's get a little Angry Birds in there. All right.
I mean, do they do that in business? Do they buy something to make themselves look a little nicer, like put nice rims on your car before you sell it?
They do, yeah. They'll buy assets, they'll sell assets. But that's only if they're actively looking to sell.
Yes. We know Phil Spencer's watching the show. He watches Chaturdays every single week.
Yeah.
Phil, just go buy Capcom and Sega. Just go do that, and we'll be here and we'll wait for the news on Monday. Thank you for showing up. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Capcom is the pick. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Capcom would be the instantaneous way for Xbox to become really cool in Japan and really cool in Europe. Because as we've seen time and time again, this is no shade on Sega. Do not get enraged when I say this next line. Pretty much every single Capcom IP sells better than every single Sega IP. It's just don't get mad. It's not me throwing shade at Sega. But Resident Evil absolutely demolishes even Sonic the Hedgehog in terms of sales every single time. So Again, SEGA would be cool. SEGA would be a great play. There's a lot of multimedia opportunities. There's a lot of great IP that come with that. But Capcom, from just a necessity standpoint in terms of people buying the games, Capcom's it. Capcom is it. You want to do a poll?
Do a poll for the people.
Say,
would you rather
power
Xbox
to the people? Democracy in action.
Yes. Would you rather Xbox buy Capcom or Sega?
Do it.
Because people are saying don't buy Sega.
Again,
well, I think everybody's going to vote for one of those, but we'll see. It's always fun to engage with the lovely people that are talking in the chat.
Exactly, dude.
Give them a little button to push. Besides the like button, which you should be pushing, hit the like button while it drums up the poll. Mash it like potatoes. Potatoes.
All right, Colt. The next topic that I want to touch on, and maybe I'll let you take this. Actually, I'm fine. I can multitask, right?
I know. That's the thing about making polls is like your brain gets compartmentalized, and I only have one side of my brain. The other side doesn't work. It's been ruined from playing video games.
Okay.
So Miles says for the people who are listening on demand, like on audio versions, he put up a poll, says, who's the right acquisition pick for Xbox, Sega or Capcom?
Yep.
And
drop your votes in. Drop your votes in there now. And while you're doing that,
oh my gosh, it's half and half. Go ahead.
Oh my, 50-50. Okay. I just want to give some shout outs to some upcoming games. We're going to be talking about Redfall. Obviously, that is the big conversation this week. We're going to be talking about the state of Xbox. One thing I did this week on Twitter was, after the Redfall news, I went on social media and said, hey, Xbox fans, let's get a vibe check. Where are you at with Xbox? And we got a lot of really genuine, honest responses. So that's something I want to touch on as well. But first, I want to give a couple shout outs to some upcoming games that I'm stoked about that are coming day one on Xbox Game Pass, baby. First up, the team at Coco Cucumber have announced that Ravenlock will be launching on Xbox Game Pass on May 4th. So this is a game you've seen in some of their showcases. This is the team that did Echo Generation. They are launching an action RPG that looks, it looks so good. Looks 100% like my type of game, and it's launching day one on Xbox Game Pass very soon. I was not expecting that game to come so soon.
Third-person melee combat has kind of I don't know if people don't know what Echo Generation is. It kind of has this like amped up Minecraft aesthetic, but your character looks like a regular animated character that's in like a pixel, like a voxel world.
Yeah,
and it's very, very colorful. If you can remember seeing it on some of the Xbox promos, but it, like Miles just said, it's landing in the no zone of between Tears of the Kingdom and Jedi Survivor and Redfall.
Yeah, it's coming right after Redfall and in between Jedi Survivor and Tears of the Kingdom, which that's a tough time for an indie game, but I'm still stoked for it. Still very excited about that. So I want to shout that out because that news I think kind of went under the radar this week because they just casually said, "Hey, by the way, this is coming out a couple weeks. Get amped up." So
very small game is why. And Echo Generation is great. It's a turn-based version of that game, and I normally don't like turn-based. And my son and I played it for hours. Anyway, yeah. The other one, I don't know. Well, go ahead. You probably have it on your list.
Yeah, I got one other one here that I want to give a shout out that's coming very soon, and this was announced at the last ID at Xbox showcase, and that's the release date for The Last Case of Benedict Fox, which is coming on April 27th. So super, super quick. That's an Eldritch horror Metroidvania side-scrolling action game that looks...
A what?
It's a Eldritch horror Metroidvania.
What's that reference?
That's Eldritch. Like H.P. Lovecraft. It's kind of Cthulhu.
Okay.
Other, old very gods. Cool. That game looks absolutely stunning.
Have you played it yet, Miles?
I haven't played it. I've watched a lot of gameplay showcases for it. It's been on my radar, but I already know it's a game that I'm going to play. I'm a big Metroidvania fan. I
played it at PAX in July, and
did you like it?
It's a lot like Ori, like Ori.
Ori.
But it's got more exploration and more narrative in between the world that you go through. Very colorful. We'll see.
We'll see. So, Cole, any other Xbox... Actually, sorry. What Xbox Game Pass games are you most stoked for? We know there's a lot coming out this year. We got Liza P. We got a lot of options to choose from for Xbox Game Pass.
Liza P's like August or something.
What's the one you're looking at like, oh, baby, give it to me right now?
I mean, obviously, I could say Starfield, but we're probably thinking of other things. But I'm really looking forward to Redfall. You know, regardless of everything that's gone on, it doesn't mean I'm not one of those people like, I'm out.
30
Not at
FPS?
all. Not at all.
No. Yeah, again, I've joked about this. We're going to talk a lot about it very soon, but yeah, I'm going to be playing Tears of the Kingdom day one, and I know what to expect in terms of performance. I know I'm teetering on 20 to 30 FPS, but that's not going to stop me from just having a big smile on my face while playing it. So
I don't think so. I think it's going to be.
I think it'll be fairly solid.
It'll be set down at 30. I think there's. We'll explain more as we get into that discussion. Yeah.
So yeah, what is your pick? What is your Game Pass pick? Obviously, Starfield is the big one. It's their biggest launch for Xbox of this year. So outside of that,
I mean, obviously, I'm super excited about Redfall and Starfield, but Liza P, I'm really excited about. I played that one at PAX like 5 different times. It is gorgeous. It makes Elden Ring look like a 360 game, but it's not open world.
Don't slander Elden Ring on this show.
Elden Ring's
okay?
amazing. Elden Ring's so beautiful.
Don't do it to me.
It's not an open world. It's a kind of a semi-linear corridor, London downtown. So you don't have this massive world that you're riding around on a horse. So they can tighten in the visuals. It is really, really pretty and very haunting. Like these clinking and clanking, wind up type enemies that are like really evil. And you're this like moody and brooding emo, very like handsome and androgynous looking Pinocchio, you know, like an 18-year-old Pinocchio or whatever. So that, I guess that's what you're supposed to be, as far as I know from the game. So Liza P looks freaking awesome. It's just another game that's like, hey, we got this for Game Pass, and you know, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, Liza P.
It's gonna destroy me.
Yeah, let's go. I'm a big Souls guy. So a Souls-like that pretty much looks in the vein of Bloodborne, but set in the Pinocchio universe. Let's go. What a wild, weird concept for a video game. What if we made Pinocchio Dark Souls and somebody's like, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. You say all you had to say was that. And that concept alone.
Every time you die, his nose doesn't grow or anything like that.
Oh, come on. That
Can you imagine? By the end, you're like bumping into things and
using it as a weapon, just smacking people left and right with your big old schnoz. Yeah. Now we're talking. Super chat from Assassin here, who says, you're all wrong. Microsoft should buy Square Enix for the memes, the most potent pony salt, the massive Game Pass dump in Japanese support. Also, Rand would completely deck Paris, Gaz, and Nick. You know, you know what? I'll throw down with Rand. That'll be the next creator clash. Me and Rand, Althor 19. Let it be known. If there are applications,
wouldn't hurt a fly. Rand is way too nice. He would never even. Yeah,
I love Rand.
Would just take you to lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah, everybody loves Rand.
Rand is a beautiful soul. Talk to Rand pretty much every single day.
Same.
Okay. All right, Colt. Are you ready? Is the chat ready? Because now we've talked about a lot of some positive things. But they're going to take a little more critical turn here as we transition into our next few topics, because we're going to be talking about Redfall being 30 FPS, which it's the conversation of the week.
Yeah, it is.
So
it's the outrage of the week.
Exactly. So as you've seen, Arcane confirmed this week that on Xbox Series X and S, that Redfall would be launching with a quality mode only that's 30 FPS. So here is what the team said in a very short, very to the point tweet. Quote, Redfall is launching on Xbox consoles with quality mode only. Xbox Series X at 4K 30 FPS and Xbox Series S at 1440p 30 FPS. A 60 FPS performance mode will be added via a game update at a later date. So there's a lot to unpack here, and we've seen a lot of very passionate takes about what this means for the game, what this means for Xbox. So I'm just going to start with the most important question is, how did you feel when you first saw this news? How did this hit you? Were you expecting it? Were you ready for this, or did this kind of take you by surprise?
Never would I ever expect that a game like Redfall and the visuals that it presents would be set to 30 FPS on the Xbox Series consoles. I was completely upset, and it really there's a whole mess that goes along with this where there's a lot to unpack, Miles. There is a lot to unpack because I had played the game but like a month ago, and it all just kind of came together that morning. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I dropped my son off at school, and Gaz sent me his screenshot, and he goes, you know, for frick's sake, he goes, what is going on with Xbox? And I look at the announcement, and I'm like, why on earth would Redfall run at 30 on these consoles when every game, 99% of the games that have come out have run at 60 FPS, and half of them look way better than Redfall, or look more demanding, or look more next gen, or all these other things that these monikers people use. And I put those air quotes up for a big reason. There's no reason why this game should run at 30. And then it started to occur to me, like, maybe that build of the game is in way more trouble than I originally thought it was. And this goes back to me playing the game in LA on a bunk A PC. I don't know what the correct word to use, and I don't normally swear, but a PC that I was like, what is this? And I put the picture up on my video last week. We were on PCs, and the guy next to me is like, are you noticing the frame rate? I'm like, yeah, it drops every once in a while. And he goes, I went into the settings to lower the resolution so I could get better performance. I'm like, yeah, because we know as PC gamers. And he goes, it was already set at 1080p. I'm like, yeah, I mean, it should look a lot nicer for how it's running. And we're like, well, you know, it's probably an old build. These builds are usually a month or two old, and it's just this part of the game they want us to play. And I was like, I just chalk it up to the typical PC performance. I've gamed on PC with big AAA games for so long that I'm so used to games diving or stuttering or hitching for absolutely no reason. Sometimes your PC is just like cranking something in the background for just a second, and the frame rate drops and it comes right back. And that's kind of what I was experiencing. So when I put together my preview review, I didn't bring up this old build in March because I figured by then the polishing and optimization is the very last thing that you do before launch.
Yeah.
And then here's the announcement 3 weeks before the game's going to come out, and they say no 60 FPS mode. I was like, it started to come together. Like, something must be wrong with this optimization on Unreal Engine 4. That was another thing we heard 2 weeks before. Oh yeah, the game's not launching on Unreal Engine 4. It's going to be or 5. It's going to be an Unreal Engine 4 game. And I was like, all these things started to come together. Of course, a lot of people are upset with me for not disclosing that there were performance problems on this PC build at my preview, but it never occurred to me that it was going to be a problem moving forward. And I could have mentioned it in the review, but I was trying to cover all this stuff about the combat, the great gunplay. I think the gunplay is really good. The world, the characters, the abilities, the mission we were playing, and trying to stay within NDA, you know, make sure I was very general about the things I talked about that I played, so I didn't get somebody hitting me up. I'll tell a real quick story. John Junisek, the head of PR of 343 Industries, sent me an email at 1 a.m. when I did my Halo Infinite review. And he's like, Colt, you've got a couple things in your review that aren't supposed to be in there. You need to yank it, redo it, and re-upload it. And I got the message at 4 a.m. when something woke me up. And I looked at my phone, and I had an email sitting there from him. I got up out of bed at 4 a.m, opened up Premiere, redid all this stuff, tried to figure out what he was talking about, and re-uploaded my review. And those things are really scary under NDA and embargo. So I was trying to, I just didn't talk about the performance. It didn't occur to me as a problem. And I was trying to get the review to be copacetic to all of the caveats and expectations you're under in this situation. It's not always super fun, I've learned, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to share some insights based on some folks I've talked to about what's potentially happening with Redfall, why it's potentially 30 FPS. But I do want to talk about my initial reaction to this news, because like you, I saw this and this is not something I was expecting. This game was a lock at 60 for sure. All of the marketing material we had seen, a lot of the previews we had seen, that was 60 FPS gameplay. We noticed even in this, like, there's some dips for sure. There's definitely some dips. Like you said, a lot of that stuff is ironed out towards the back end. There's a lot of polishing that goes on. I remember when
every game dips. Every single game will dip, except for Forza Horizon and Forza Motorsport and Gran Turismo. Like, most racing games almost never dip, really. But every open world game, yes. I don't care what you're playing
I've done
on.
a lot of previews. I wasn't part of the Redfall preview, but I've done so many previews for games, and it's almost always on PC. So the fact that the Redfall previews were on PC, that wasn't a red flag. I've seen people say like, oh, but that should have been a red flag. We haven't seen it running on the console. A lot of games do that because that's how it works. But when I was at the Saints Row preview, as a more recent example, I asked outright, hey, what's the console situation going to be like? And they said, oh, we're going to have 4 performance modes on console. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, that's awesome. That's good to know. Even though I'm playing on PC, I have that information. So when I saw this news, I was taken aback. I was honestly a little bit flabbergasted because first and foremost, this is the first $70 game from Xbox. This is one of their first exclusives to not only Xbox in a while, but Xbox Series X and S. This isn't a cross-generation game. This is an Xbox Series X and S only game. We've seen Xbox time and time again have performance options. Halo Infinite, Forza, most of the games that they've shipped have had performance options. And again, we know Bethesda is a separate entity. It's owned by Xbox. They're doing their own thing. But that being said, Xbox, for the most part, has set the precedent, set the expectation that you will have options when it comes to performance. So 4K 30, cool. That's an option that we expect. But we also expect on the other side of that to have an option for 60 frames per second. So for Xbox to basically come out and say, or I should say Arcane in this case, to come out and say, hey, it's not going to be there at launch, but it's coming later. That is more infuriating to me than the fact that maybe if they straight up said it's impossible, okay, I would be very disappointed. I would have a lot of questions. But if they said we can't give you 60 FPS for this game, maybe then they could swing it from a PR angle and tell you all the mechanical reasons and all of the stuff they're doing behind the scenes to make that impossible. But no, they're not saying that. They're saying, no, we're not giving it to you at launch. Sorry. It's coming, and they say at a later date. So I've had people say, oh, maybe it's coming a couple weeks after. No. When you use wording that says at a later date, that means you don't know what that date is. You don't know.
They've actually told you 100% why it's not 60 FPS, and nobody quite catches it. They've been very clear to say that it's coming at a later date. There's only one explanation. The game is so poorly optimized that they're going to have to do extra work that's not complete yet, and they're going to launch it incomplete, without the performance nailed down, which means if you're playing it on PC, if you have a middleware PC or you have a pretty great PC, you may have to lower the game far lower than you thought you would have to in settings. And someone asked about the Gotham Knights thing. I think this build of Redfall in Unreal Engine 4 is so poorly optimized, with Arcane usually never working in Unreal Engine 4. Their team normally works in the Void engine. This is their first time doing an open world in a different engine. They've made decisions in the design criteria that push it, I'll just speculate, heavier on the CPU, and the CPU's taxed out. And if you lower all of the other settings, which are mostly graphical, it's not going to free up the instructions on the processor. And now the game has an optimization for performance issue, and they can't get it running at 60 FPS until they make major changes, which I think, Miles, is 1 to 2 months after launch. Until we get a.
And so again, that's where my head starts to go, as I say, well, it's not coming shortly after, but Redfall is already launching at a tough time. Even though this is an Xbox show, even though a lot of people maybe don't necessarily care, Zelda is going to be an absolute dominating force for the games industry in the middle of May. So you're launching a new IP that's already it's niche. It was my most anticipated game. Like, it still is in a lot of ways, but before this news, far and away, it was my most anticipated game. Could not wait to play Redfall. But I was still conscious of, oh, Zelda's out 2 weeks after this. That's kind of tough. It's kind of we've seen Horizon suffer a similar fate. Like, that's tough. That's tough for a new IP to again, this is an Xbox show. Maybe you don't have a Switch. Maybe you don't care. But a lot of people do care. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on this game. So if it's 30 FPS, that doesn't help its launch situation. And then guess what? Let's say it does take a month. Guess what comes out a month after Redfall? Diablo. And if you're an Xbox fan who wants a horror RPG, which there's a lot of crossover between Redfall and Diablo, I guarantee it, it's not going to matter for a lot of people. People aren't going to be like, oh, damn, the 60 FPS update for Redfall is out. Sick. I guess I'll not play Diablo 4 and just play that.
I don't care who you are. If you decide to go ahead and play it at 30 on console, you'll have rolled the credits on all of the main content long before the 60 FPS patch comes out. And will you want to go back? Yeah, you may go back and mess around with it at 60 and go, wow, this is really nice, but I'm already taxed out and I'm already checked out on it. Let me say another thing. I'm not making excuses. I am not. I'm actually putting the blame squarely on Arcane and Xbox for the situation we're in. And do not say that it's okay for Zelda to be 30 frames on a Switch. The Switch is a 2017 mobile chip hardware, mobile portable platform that has never been a performant machine. It is not a $500 box that has not only promised 60 FPS, but has delivered it on 99% of the games that have been launched on the Series X and even the Series S, because there's no reason why a game like Redfall shouldn't run at 60 on the Series S unless there's a massive optimization problem and performance is completely cramped. And so, yes, Xbox should have gone in there and helped. I don't know what's going on, but Arcane normally is independent. They've done everything on their own, and they've had an extra year, and we're still in this situation. Miles and I might play. Well, I'll probably play the game on PC. I might mess around with it. I need to find out if it's Play Anywhere. Like, if I can play the game on PC, and if they happen to patch it in 3 weeks, I can move back over to the Xbox, because I would rather play on the Series X with the pop-up animation, which makes a big deal to me. That's just me personally. With the access to all of the other features and apps through a click of the Xbox button on a wireless controller, that means a lot to me. So yeah, I will play it like I did Gotham Knights on PC, and I will try to get that convenience console experience with a mouse and keyboard at the arm's length, which is ridiculous. But that's just me.
Again, you bring up an interesting point. I made the joke about, I'm going to complain about Redfall at being 30 FPS, but then immediately plays Tears of the Kingdom. But Nintendo has never come out and said that we have the world's most powerful console. Nintendo never mentions power at all in any of their presentations. And Xbox, on the other side, does. Time and time again, they talk about power, they talk about frames, they talk about performance, and that's where you get yourself into a problem. Because you set the expectation for your audience and for people who spent $500 on a Series X or $300 on a Series S that you will be able to play new games at 60 FPS. I've grown up playing games that were 10 FPS. Like, I've been through the gauntlet, all right? I've played PS1 games that ran like complete garbage, still had a good time. Did the 360 generation, had a good time. The problem is a lot of people have been on the other side, all right? We've opened Pandora's box, and now a lot of players expect 60 FPS. I'm not someone who looks at 30 FPS and says, that's unplayable for me. I can still play a game at 30 FPS. I can still enjoy a game at 30 FPS, but 100% of the time, I want it at 60 FPS, all right? We just had Resident Evil 4 Remake launch with multiple graphics modes, with ray tracing at 60 FPS, a locked 60 FPS, by the way. Like, that game runs beautifully on Series X. And quite frankly, if I'm being 100% honest, Resident Evil 4 looks way better, way better than what we've seen with Redfall in terms of the fidelity. Yeah. Different scope, different scale. I know all of that is a factor.
Resident Evil 3 looked just about the same beautiful presentation on an Xbox One X as Resident Evil 4 does. The only problem is back on the Xbox One X for Resident Evil 3, the frame rate dipped every once in a while, but you get a better experience on more powerful hardware. But people are in the chat are saying, "Oh, it's the tools, it's the tools." This is what you're going to have to learn going forward with Redfall. It's not about the Series X or Series S. And it's not about the efficiency features and the architecture and the tools in the dev kit that we always talk about. This, I think, I am very confident to stand on, because you'll never hear this from Arcane, but this is an improperly balanced optimization problem in the software of their engine of the build of the game. It would be 60 FPS at launch. If they could fix it, they would throw more people on it. They need more time to make big decisions and change them to get the optimization where it's supposed to be. So if it's way over here where the performance can't hit 60 on the consoles, they have to start taking design decisions where the processor is relegated to render things and make things happen, right? But not render, that's on the GPU. But when I've dove into the hardware stuff and the software stuff for quite a long time. And when you build games, you have to choose The CPU will do animations, it'll do interactions. The GPU will do textures, polygons, the 3D rendering, the lighting, all that stuff happens mostly on the GPU. So they have to pick and choose and take the load off the CPU and make a more balanced build. And that's why they're saying 60 FPS will be patched in later.
60 FPS is way more difficult than resolution. There's this kind of misconception that you can just turn down the resolution and bam, you get 60 FPS. In some cases, that works and that will help. But if it is a true hurdle and there are issues where the frame rate is tanking massively, like you said, that is typically a CPU side. So maybe there are gameplay systems, maybe there are mechanics in this that are keeping that from being possible. I will say, based on information that I have, there was a 60 FPS version on Xbox Series X as of a couple months ago. So they were clearly trying to work on a Series X version, and they were clearly unhappy with the 60 FPS build and made the decision to delay it. Or made the decision to delay the 60 FPS mode. So that makes me feel like, this game isn't getting the time it needs. They want, clearly somebody, whether it's Arcane or it's Xbox, and that's where I don't know. I've heard basically both things. That Arcane was targeting 30. From this game's been in development since 2017. That they were targeting 30, and that Xbox wanted 60. I've heard that. I don't know that that's the reality, but I've heard that. I've heard some folks speculate that the Series S wasn't going to be able to be 60. That the Series X version was getting 60, but the Series S wasn't, and they want to have parity. Because there's already some misconceptions about the Series S in terms of power capability, and a first-party game having a 60 FPS version on the X and not the S, that's going to amplify those concerns and questions.
Well, we were talking about this last night in party chat with somebody else, right? And I said that logic completely falls apart. Xbox would not suffer one to save the other. If they're worried about the Series S having a 30 frames mode and the Series X being the only one with 60, they don't want to launch it that way, but yet they'll launch the full game both at 30 and make both of them look weak. So that logic doesn't work. What was the other thing you said? That Arcane was always targeting 30? Now, I do not agree with that person who said that at all. They've always been targeting 60. There's no reason why this hardware, they know that this game is going to run at 60. Arcane Lyon in France, they targeted 60 on Deathloop. This is the standard, a 60 frames game now that you no longer have a massive CPU bottleneck like the Xbox One and PS4. So you can run almost every game at 60, and this was their set. That's why they had to put out, if they were going to always target 30, they would have just put the game out. They had to put out this bad news and push it out, get it, cried over for a week. And I do not agree with any of this communication whatsoever. But this is what they did. Let's put out the news now and give people a week to moan and groan about it. And then 2 weeks out later, we'll put out the game. And I want to say, my excitement for this game is lowered a little bit. I am still super excited for Redfall. It doesn't change how great or cool the game is. It doesn't change how immersive and fun the characters are going to be. And if you're okay with 30, you're still going to get the same experience you expected. But that 60 frames is like that. You can play tons of games at 30, right? And you and I would always rather choose to play at 60. When you're playing at 60, you get that feeling like, the software and the hardware are all premium. This is nice. This is, now I'm feeling in the moment, in the modern era, and you can get over to the 30 frames. You can move the camera and it strobes, and it's not that big of a deal. But when you have 60, you're constantly being reminded every time you move the camera, every time you move around the world, that you're getting that premium experience you expected in this day and age.
Exactly. Again, when I play a 30 FPS game, again, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's jarring. It's on, booting it up, I'm like, oh, and then after 5 minutes, my brain adjusts and it's fine. I'm playing Breath of the Wild again right now, and it's kind of the same way. I went from playing, I think, Halo Infinite at 120 FPS to Breath of the Wild, and at first I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can feel it. But then eventually
it feels like, and
if there isn't huge input lag, 30 FPS is fine. I can play a game. But that being said, Redfall specifically being this premier $70 Xbox game, this exclusive game, exclusively on next-gen hardware, for them to come out and tell me that 60 FPS is coming later, that is such a disappointment, because we just went through the saga with Halo Infinite, where it's clear, we talked about this ahead of the release that, okay, they're cutting features, they're cutting content because clearly they want to get this out the door and that stuff's coming later. And then people speculated, oh, it'll be soon. Like, it's fine. It's whatever. It's not necessarily indicative of the final state of the game. And we know in that case that it was. Like, the launch of Halo Infinite was great, but it was feature light, it was content light, and they clearly had to cut things to get it out the door. And this just feels like another misstep. Like, Xbox was poised in 2023 to have just a killer year. The first killer year just objectively for the brand in a long time. And people were excited.
It still is.
We just had Hi-Fi Rush. Like, people were just coming off that high. Like, that was such a big win for Xbox. And people were excited about Redfall. We have Starfield coming up. And then instead of Starfield being this cool moment for the brand, it's just this conversation. It's just this reason for people to be skeptical of Xbox. And that sucks for Arcane in a huge way, because there's been so many negative messaging beats for this game. And it sucks because the game
coming right off of the IGN gameplay that they...
and again, like, even the reveal trailer, which people are like telling you that it looks like a weird Left 4 Dead ripoff. That's what people assumed it was. So this game has not been messaged or communicated well. That's just the reality, regardless.
Well, it's sort of new, like, when they say things like, it's more like Far Cry 2. And when I played the game, I got an hour and a half, and I didn't get to really experience most of the world. I was rushing to feel the combat, to see what it's like to loot. I didn't even get to really mess with the gear and the perk system or the powers that much, because an hour and a half is not enough. But I was really excited when I played the game. We all loved it. So we have a lot to look forward to. So that's not going to change. As far as 2023, like, Xbox has a killer year, no matter what. Even with Minecraft Legends, which is dropping next week for everybody, that I didn't really like that much. At first, I really liked it, but I'm not an RTS guy. But it's doing pretty decently. And then, I don't know, they have a big year. They have a really big year.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about that. There's still a lot of reasons to be excited about Xbox. But I think coming off of 2022 and coming off of some of the frustrations regarding output, and the last big game they put out was Halo Infinite. And my God, so many people are just sick of talking about Halo Infinite because it was this lengthy saga of disappointment for a lot of people. So when I look at Xbox and I look at Xbox Game Studios, I get excited about the promise of what that means for these teams. They've curated a lot of really great teams who've shown genuine promise and potential. And so when I look at the first marquee release from that team in Xbox Game Studios, they are selling us on the idea that you should be excited about Xbox buying all of these teams, buying all of these studios, buying all of these publishers, because that means that their games are going to be better than they've ever had. They're going to have more resources than they've ever had to put out the game. When I see them come out and tell me, hey, 60 FPS is coming later, sorry, that is completely contrary to what you sold people on when it comes to the future possibilities of Xbox. It's a disservice to Redfall. It's a disservice to this release, because any small negative moment for Xbox right now, considering that the microscope that they're under by so many critics and even fans. We're going to talk about this later, but I've had people in my Discord, the Xbox-focused Discord, which are generally optimistic, generally positive about the Xbox brand, feeling very down about this moment because Redfall should have been an easy win. It really should have been. And this, again, in an isolated bubble, maybe this 30 FPS situation isn't that big of a deal. It's a bummer, for sure. It's negatively impacted my excitement.
In the grand scheme of the world, it's not. But those of us who are hardcore gamers, we expected more. And like Bob Joe says, and he's just kidding, but he says, Colt Eastwood helped with the deception campaign for Redfall. Arcane set the expectation for 60 FPS. And they showed visuals of the game, every single trailer, that would look exactly the way the game would look on Xbox Series X. I guarantee the very first gameplay trailer, all the way through the small ones that have come out almost every week for the past 6 or 8 months, all of those trailers are exactly how, if I put you what was it they expected to put out in the Series X at 60 frames and the PC, I don't think you'd be able to tell the difference. These are the expectations they set. They showed us the game the way it should be presented if you were going to play it. And this is exactly what you should come to expect. And this is normally how games come out. They show the games like this. They come out like this. I remember seeing the first gameplay of Cyberpunk, and I was like, it doesn't look otherworldly like people said it was going to be. And when the game came out, even on my Xbox Series X, I was like, yeah, this is what I thought it was going to look like. And you have to set your expectation levels properly. That's your own fault. I've always been super excited for Redfall, and we've yet to see what the game has to offer. And has Arcane ever put out a bad game? Maybe this is going to be their lowest rated game. I expect this game to run anywhere from a 78 open critic to an 82. But that really depends on how transformative or impactful the world is, which we have yet to see. And them trying to market it as, sorry, I kind of went off a tangent, that it's like a Far Cry type world. Like, Arcane doesn't make a cookie cutter game. If you're going to be a simpleton and say it's like Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood, you're not paying attention. Arcane makes games that take more than 2 seconds or a minute to explain. Try to explain Prey to someone who's never seen the game.
Yeah, that's, again, there's a reason so many people love Arcane, because they push great ideas. None of their games have been 60. I see that's something that people have mentioned, and that's true, but this is a new generation. Yeah, not a lot of shooters, or not a lot of first-person games last generation were 60. There were exceptions where, Call of Duty, for example, that was 60, but Call of Duty and Prey are not the same experience in a lot of ways. And so, again, if they had messaged, targets and set better expectations, I don't think we'd be having such a, extreme reaction to it. But they've shown 60 FPS gameplay, and then, like you said, they did the really sneaky thing where they put out a tweet like 2 weeks before the game launched. Oh, by the way, hey, yeah, we're not gonna bring it. And again, Twitter is just a small bubble. And again, it's maybe the average person, and maybe they have data that suggests the average person doesn't care. They can put it in Xbox Game Pass. It'll have millions of players. Maybe the average person doesn't really care about 30 versus 60 FPS. But your audience, your most engaged vocal audience, definitely does. And they know that. And that's why they didn't announce that information until right before the launch, which is just it's a disappointing move. And again, I was very mad with Halo Infinite because of the promise of Xbox Game Studios, the promise of support, the promise of making sure that these games launch in the best day possible. I don't know if Arcane was targeting 30, but if Arcane was targeting 60 FPS and they weren't allowed to hit that at launch, that's a failure on Xbox's part. That's just that. It really is. For me, it's that simple. Again, games are complicated. There's a lot of work that goes into it, so I'm not going to sit here and dunk on the developers or dunk on leadership. But in this case, I think they made the wrong call. And again, it just leads people to, their critics are going to question every future release now, because they, again, are being inconsistent time and time again. And it's just a bad look for the future of Xbox Game Studios. In this particular case, because they didn't set expectations properly, and they often don't.
Yeah. I mean, I often ask myself those same questions, Miles, about whose fault, where did Arcane go wrong? Why didn't Xbox step in? Did Xbox just sit back and go, look, it's Arcane, they've never missed, let's let them do their thing, let's not interfere with them? My problem is people who expect it to go both ways. Xbox ruins everything they touch, and then they say, Xbox needs to get in there and make the difference and make the changes. Like, yeah, but you said every time Xbox comes in, they ruin everything they touch. So you can't have it both ways. And there needs to be a paradigm shift about how Xbox treats their new studios and their partners. Because now that they have Bethesda and ZeniMax, explain to me why Xbox's team is there hand in hand with Todd Howard's team with Bethesda Softworks for Starfield, helping the game really dance on the Xbox Series S and X. But then it seems like to us from the outside that Xbox didn't help them make Redfall dance on the Xbox Series S and X. So again, the only answer left is to blame Arcane for building this game too top heavy in Unreal Engine 4, and they ran out of time even with an extra year. So, and everyone's like, oh, fire Sarah and fire Phil, the lies and the deception, and all of my emotions are poured into something that is, it's like, be reasonable, pay attention to what's going on. Don't compare the games that Nintendo makes and say that they're doing more on hardware. Like, pay attention. understand how software works, understand how hardware works, understand that sometimes developers have totally shoehorned them into a problem. They have to dig themselves out. And I'm upset with Arcane for doing this when they never miss. They've never missed with a game. And here they are making a couple of big mistakes. Always online. Host only gets progression in the missions, so you have to replay missions over and over if you're by yourself. And now the performance issues that are going to be on PC and are going to be on Xbox Series S and X until they get it patched.
Yeah. And these situations are tough too, because there's a lot of assumptions about whose fault it is. We see people say it's Arcane's fault. We see people say it's Xbox's fault. Again, more very passionate people call for executives to be fired. We don't know what the reality of this situation really is. So it's tough to really pinpoint exactly who's at fault in this particular case. We don't know what the reality was. I will say, in a pre-Xbox acquisition world, maybe Redfall wasn't even delayed. Maybe Redfall and Starfield weren't even delayed at all, and Bethesda just put those games out in typical Bethesda fashion, where they're a little bit rough around the edges. People connect with them. People still like them. I think that's the reality. So when I look at people saying, well, it's completely Xbox's fault, on one hand, they did delay it a little. They did delay both Redfall and Starfield to give the team more time to deliver. And I think that's worth noting. That's important to highlight. But then when I look at Redfall, in the case of 60 FPS, I say, why didn't you give them a little more time then? Is it because you made that 12-month promise last year and every single game you promised was not going to hit that? So Redfall was like your one.
Partially.
Hey, we got to get this one out in the first half. This has to be it. Can we do it? And I don't want to sit here and stir up the typical console war nonsense, because that's not really what this show is or what this conversation needs. But PlayStation, on the other hand, we know they get actively involved. They send devs. Even when it comes to third-party games like the Callisto Protocol. There were PlayStation developers making sure that was as polished as it could be out the gate. So we have Xbox Game Studios, who has this network and this hub, and we've heard about the meetings where they all come together and share ideas and collaborate. So it makes me wonder, why wasn't there a support team coming in to help Redfall address these problems and make sure
Xbox
that
is also relatively new at this, Miles. People have to remember that before 2019, Xbox had no studios.
Yeah,
they had two Forza studios, a Halo studio, and a Sea of Thieves studio, basically. I'm just going to boil, or a Gears studio as well. They just had Halo, Gears, and Forza, and Rare. That was basically pretty much Xbox Game Studios. And that's all we saw. And now they've got this suite of studios that they're trying to manage. And then Bethesda, I'm sure Bethesda's telling Xbox and ZeniMax, we just want to be able to do our thing. And they probably struck the deal with them, look, we're going to self-publish, which they are. We're going to create the games, and if we need help, we'll reach out. And I think Arcane, you're right when you said the 12-month thing, that maybe, and this would really tick me off, maybe Xbox said, just launch it at 30. We already missed almost all of our deadlines for 12 months. We don't want you to be another one of them. We'll just patch it 60 later. That's a horrible look on both sides from Xbox and Arcane. So I don't agree with that.
Because I think the hard reality is they probably had some conversations behind the scenes that said, hey, what's going to be a bigger PR hit? Another delay for Redfall or a delay to 60 FPS? They're saying, hey, we can get the game running at a lock 30, no problem on both Series X and S. PC, if you have a high-end PC, you can run it at 60. Or do we just delay it and take the PR hit as well for delaying another game? And we just had the developer direct, which wasn't that long ago, which was this cool moment for Xbox. Again, they gave us some release date and got people excited. But again, was that release date based on 60 FPS hopes? Because like I said, I've heard that the 60 FPS build on Xbox Series X was tested a few months ago. So I don't know. I want to circle back to Mr. Joanna Dark's super chat from earlier, though, because that ties into this conversation really well. About the transparency of previews. Because, again, we talked about this a little bit before the show, and you talked about this on the show a little bit, but you were getting some heat about not pressing enough on the console versions when you were at the preview.
Yeah.
But as you told me, they basically said, we're not talking about the console versions today. We're talking about gameplay. And sometimes that's the focus of it. So do you think that there is a transparency issue when it comes to previews.
Yeah. I mean, I expected them to dodge the question, but I asked anyway. Are you guys talking about the Xbox Series S and X version? No, we're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about the characters in the mission. And I'm like, and everyone's like, oh, you should have pressured them, or you should have dug harder. It's like, no, you don't. That's not tactful. I'm not Jason Schreier. I'm not out there going, you know what? Take this, No, I'm not a journalist. I'm a content creator, and I'm not going to push beyond the boundaries of what their communications team is working on, especially when you've got a PR person that I asked who doesn't know all of the technical details that's coming in the next 3 months, and maybe even 3 months, then they don't know exactly like, what's the question going to be, right? What question is Colt Eastwood about to ask? Is he going to ask me about resolution? Is he going to ask me about frame rate? What's he going to ask? I don't know. And I don't have talking points for that. I work in communication and marketing. And when you go into an event, you have talking points that you go over that are probably what you're going to be asked, but those are the ones that you say, we're not talking about that right now. And then there's the things that are part of your marketing messaging. And then those are the things that, and they say, can you play as Layla? And then in the middle of a mission, can you switch to Jacob? And they would say, no, you can't do that in the game. That's an answer they're prepared or willing to answer at that time. That's how it works. And everybody who hasn't gone to the event or hasn't played the game, who wants to speak for me, go ahead, I guess, if it makes you feel better.
It's one of those things where a lot of people say, why isn't anyone asking? And the reality is, usually people do ask. There's usually just not an interesting answer to share. Like, people talk about Square Enix and Xbox. I've reached out to the head of Xbox PR and the head of Square Enix PR multiple times, gotten email responses that have no information. And so I'm not going to be like, hey, I reached out and got an email that said, we have nothing to share at this time, because that's not interesting.
That's how it works. And you got a guy like Ryden who says classic damage control, which Ryden doesn't know what the phrase damage control means, because he used it out of context. He doesn't understand. He said that they paid for the flight and I'm simping for them. Ryden hasn't watched me on X and C and in my other videos and on Twitter talk about the world and how there are things that I think need to be improved. Ryden hasn't listened to me talk about how I don't like how you are stuck to one character for the entirety of the campaign, unless you want to play with other people, then you can mix it up. Ryden hasn't listened to me talk about how I told Arcane to get rid of Always Online. I told Arcane, delay the game until 60 FPS is available for console. Ryden doesn't pay attention, because that's how people are. People can be very simple, Miles. Very simple in how they look at things, because there are people that were taking a screenshot of my preview video and telling everyone that I said it was running on Xbox Series X, when I said on X and C, my podcast with over 30,000 people watching, that watched me listen to talk about how it's on PC. These things are very simple, but it takes a little extra effort to dig in there and do your research.
It's hitting close to home, Colt. But again,
come on, give me a break. I mean, and most people came at me for like 3 or 4 days, like nonstop, and I just ignored them, because as somebody like Paris told me, if it doesn't apply, let it fly. Like, people accuse me of lying or accuse me of things I didn't do. Why should I like put any effort to explain to someone who doesn't care about what the truth is? They only care about that they think they're on this witch hunt on Twitter.com.
It's what bothers me when we have these conversations is, again, I'm perfectly fine with being critical. Like, it's something we do off. We've been very critical. Look at my Twitter thread, even listen to me talk on this show. I'm not really letting a lot slide from Xbox here, but
no, you're not.
People correlate being mean with being honest, and I hate that. I hate it so much. That's not who I am. I'm not going to be an asshole on this show. I'm not going to be an asshole on Twitter to make a point. That's not who I am, because these situations are always nuanced. There's always complicated things, and we don't have the answers. If you say you have the answers and you don't, you just look like an asshole. And there's going to be people on the other side when those answers come out. They're going to point at you and they're going to say, hey, you were totally wrong. You were way off. And people do it all the time, because we live in this space of hyperbole, and we live in the space of inflammatory headlines, and people just jump on it instantly with the hottest take imaginable. They come out of the gate hotter than you can possibly be every single time. And it's exhausting. I don't have the energy for it. I don't do it. So I don't. And I'm tired of people saying, well, you're not mad, so you're not being honest. No.
Right.
Now I'm mad. Now you got me pissed off.
don't get me wrong. Like I'm super happy. Like I've really enjoyed everything I've been able to do. The games every single game I played, I've freaking really enjoyed. And I've had a good time enjoying this hobby of playing games, especially having content where I can report. And this is the first time I've been flown out to an event, and having early access to a game is really cool. But you have to learn in a professional environment. And, some people, I can understand you if you're younger or you haven't worked in a professional career very long, like you can lack tact. You don't have, good business sense or people skills, and you don't talk with you don't spend a lot of time in front of the big bosses at your job. Like that takes time to grow that. And somebody like Ryden who just says things like that, it's going to take time for him to develop and grow as an adult to be able to understand that when you critique something, you can do it respectfully. You can, like I said, like in the very first 10 minutes of your show, I'll say that Ubisoft Plus isn't for me. I think it's a little expensive for what would normally be a subscription service. And that's it. And then I keep it moving because it's just video games at the end of the day. And we do our best. Redfall was always shown at 60. We were every one of us, even the most toxic of anti-Xbox people, were expecting Redfall to be 60 frames. They were all shocked. I was shocked. And what I did that morning was I started to do some investigations and some analytical thinking and what's going on. And I'm like, oh yeah, the game was running choppy on that bunk PC on an early build. Maybe it never leveled out. And I started putting together, and then I do my research with what I know about Unreal Engine and about how Arcane normally doesn't work in Unreal Engine. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a video and saying, here's what's going on, here's what I experienced, and here's what I think is going forward. And the head of PR told me for Bethesda that, Colt, we like the way that you are honest about things and you stay positive and you like to rile people up, but you stay true to what you like and you stay convicted. And that one of the reasons why I got invited, because people don't know this, Miles, but my channel, my podcast is full of Xbox bashing, but I do it respectfully. When the whole debacle was going on with the delays of Starfield and Redfall, and the debacle of Xbox falling over with Halo Infinite, I've been so vocal about that. But you do it respectfully because these are people. These are hundreds of developers. These are people that you're in a community of people that love gaming. You say your piece, do it respectfully, and you move on. That's really all it's about. And unfortunately, Redfall has been a very nasty mess. And I've taken the lumps. I've taken the criticism. And, even a good friend of mine said, when you go out to these events, you have to be very careful about how you portray your feelings about the games. I'm like, my feelings don't change. I'm still super excited for Redfall. I'm just disappointed that the performance isn't at the expectation on my favorite console or on my platform, which would be on Xbox Series X. There
exactly. And again, I knew this conversation would, have a lot of passionate feedback from people listening and watching, and that's expected. That's understandable. At the start of the show, we talked about, I talked about this chat being civil. So I want to take a second to remind people in the chat. I added some more mods so we can relegate some of the obvious trolling that's going on here. But yeah, again, there's a lot people feel passionately about that, and I don't think there's a problem. I think it's fine to have a passionate response to news like this, because it is a bit of a bummer, but also at the same time, like, we need to stop assuming the absolute worst of everyone we see online. Like that's a problem for me, and it's something I've made it a point not to take a step back because we all have those gut feelings. We're like, oh, maybe it's this, but for some people, that gut feeling becomes their reality. They look at somebody online and they say, this person is doing this for the most sinister reasons imaginable every time. And it's
let me say
unfortunate.
Two people. I'll say two people. I won't mention their names, but they're PlayStation centric. And I see them get attacked, and they'll clip a video of them. And I like these two people that cover PlayStation, and they'll say, I can't believe he said this. And I listen to this 1 minute segment they clipped of this PlayStation guy talking. I'm like, what in there did he say that you don't like? Like, he said, I'm still excited for Redfall. I still think it's going to be a great game. I'm disappointed about this. I'm like, please. I mean, everybody needs to chill.
Yeah.
Like really
all
chill.
All this being said, I'm still gonna play Redfall on day one.
Yep.
I'll play it on console like a heathen and suffer through 30 FPS. Because I'm still excited about it. I'm excited. Like,
I mean, are you gonna end up playing more of it on Xbox, or are you gonna play a lot of it on PC? What's your decision?
I'm gonna play it mostly on Xbox, I think, because that's where I prefer to play. I have a decent gaming PC. I could probably get this going at 60 on my PC, but that's just not typically where I prefer to play with my friend group.
Same.
So I'm going to play it on console at launch. I'm not going to wait for the 60 FPS patch because I want to play it. I'm still excited about the world. That's the thing that's been most compelling to me, is this setting of Redfall, Massachusetts, this vampire-driven, Stephen King-inspired world. And we know Arcane does an amazing job building worlds and building characters. So there's still a lot to be excited about it. And when we have these conversations, I'm just tired of having the but. Like, Xbox always has a but attached to a release. This game looks great, but this release was amazing, but I'm excited about Xbox, but. And like, they need a moment right now that has no buts. Like, Hi-Fi Rush was the first one. Boom, shadow drop out of nowhere. The game is amazing. It's on Xbox Game Pass.
So good.
Just a high moment for Xbox. And then a few months later.
Well,
but
I mean,
Redfall is great, but it's 30 FPS.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want that at all. And, people like use the whataboutism. PlayStation just recently had a game that they partnered with that had really bad performance problems. And I think part of it, I'm not going to say, so that happened, so this is okay. But I sure look at how people react to that game from PlayStation and then turn around and say, now I'm going to give the same energy against Xbox because I had to deal with it on my favorite platform on PlayStation. Some of that was part of why the big outcry came out for Redfall being 30, but also it seemed like half of the people that follow me were like, I'll play it at 30. Why don't you just wait, Colt? Wait till the patch. And I said, fine, So I understand that you're right, Miles, that if you look at one microcosm, it doesn't mean what the whole world is. And Digital Foundry did a poll on their website, Eurogamer, about, do you care if it's 60 or 30? And I think the majority said, I don't really care, and I'm okay with high resolution at 30. I think that outweighed the 60 frames. So that's like putting the net out there for like gamers on all kinds of platforms.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Again, I'm sure this wasn't an easy decision to make, but there was probably some data that said this was, I don't know, the best of the two, because whatever reason they felt like this was the call to make. I don't have all the answers, but I don't know what the reasoning is behind the scenes. But for some reason they thought this was the call. And there's probably some justification for it somewhere. I'm not stoked about it. Again, I want to play this at 60 on Xbox, but at this point, I don't think they're delaying it. I don't think it's getting delayed.
No, I think it's going to go gold next week. I mean, that's what I'm assuming. And we talked about this way earlier. I think on Xbox Series S and X, it's going to run very, very stable, because I'll bet that the game ran at 60 almost all the time, and it drops so often they're like, we can't ship it this way. Let's lock it to 30. And that's what we've been doing for 10 years. I think a lot of games could have ran at 60 on Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, and the devs are like, it drops way too much, and it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So just go ahead and lock it to 30, boost resolution up because we have extra in the GPU. So just looking at the Series S being half of 4K at 30 should tell you that when they get performance mode in, the game should look a lot nicer on the consoles.
Let's get to some super chats here, because y'all been dropping a bunch and we want to touch on it. Appreciate all of you hanging out. And extra special shout out to the people keeping it civil. I know some people in the chat weren't, but we have some more mods in there to hopefully simmer that down a little bit. And again, huge shout out to everyone joining. If you're enjoying the conversations, even though they are a little more passionate, people feel strongly, hit that like button. We got a super chat from Assassin who says, I'm sorry, 30 FPS is unacceptable, and anyone who is supporting this is basically saying it's okay to expect less for more money. Hashtag delay Redfall.
$70, Miles. $70.
Again, you can say, oh, it's on Game Pass, and that's true. It is on Game Pass, but still, for a $70 next-gen only game to launch with only
on Unreal Engine 4.
With only one option,
yeah.
I can see. Again, I'm not going to fault anyone who's very upset to the point of not playing the game. I'm still going to play the game, and I'm going to sit there and think to myself, what could have been. Oh, what could have been, but I understand. It's a bummer. Hargeet Johnny, who says, seems to be a bit of a pattern with the current gen only games and 30 FPS. Plague Tale, Gotham Knights, and now Redfall. Haven't even seen Unreal Engine 5. I hope 30 FPS isn't the norm going forward. We did have a few back-to-back. A Plague Tale Requiem, and we did have a Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights, to me, I don't know, again, what the situation was there, but a Plague Tale Requiem, I could point to the visual presentation and what they were trying to do with the environments and say, all right, well, at least like this looks like a truly next-gen, quote-unquote, experience from just raw fidelity. When you have the moments where you just see the rats just flooding down, you're like, yeah, that looks like something that couldn't be possible on a previous gen machine. Some people look
very CPU intensive, I think.
Yeah, some people look at Redfall and say, like, is this something that couldn't have been done on a previous gen machine? And again, I feel like they believe that was the case, but I think from a visual perspective, until we have our hands on it, then we'll have a better idea of like what this game delivered.
Yeah, like I said, there's only one answer remaining, and it's that build is really top heavy, and it's going to take extra time.
Hargeet Chani also backing up Colteastwood. This is Unreal Engine 4, which has many 60 FPS games on console. It is the first time Arcane is using Unreal Engine over Void/id techs, not tools/hardware. So kind of backing up, saying that this maybe is a software thing. Nintendo the Otaku says Xbox is still set to have an incredible year, but Tears of the Kingdom is bodying their 2023 lineup single-handedly, still waiting for PlayStation to drop a first-party game. I think what added some extra salt to the wound this week is that Tears of the Kingdom showing and Final Fantasy 16's showing were just absolutely stunning. Like both of those games, like everyone was riding that high, and everyone's like, yeah, look at these 2023 is a good year for gaming. And then Xbox is just sitting there like, Redfall's 30 FPS. So it was this whiplash of everyone being super excited about PlayStation and Nintendo, and then everyone being kind of frustrated with Xbox, which doesn't help the situation. John Wolf has super chat, says, great show, guys. Colt, admit it. You switched the Xbox Series X dev kit for the Xbox 360 ones when you visited Arcane.
Oh, I wish I could see the dev kit in person, but yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah.
Magnum Gaming says, why can't they just make it run on last gen then? Use FPS boost to bring it to 60. Oh, God. Just launch it on that and just wait for FPS boost. Magnum Gaming... Sorry, go ahead.
The build that they have there would, Jason Ron and his team would find out that that trick wouldn't work either.
Magnum Gaming says, is skipping optimization for 60 at launch a strategy moving forward in order to meet the Game Pass game release every quarter, like Phil said? I don't know. We talked about it a little bit. Like clearly conversations were had where they said, all right, well, we don't want to give you more time, or the game is not getting more time because of what else is coming out. Because again, we look at this release date for Redfall, it gives them a couple weeks between Zelda and a month between Diablo. But once you start delaying it, then you're competing directly with those games, and then you're competing directly with other Xbox first-party releases. So maybe they just said, all right, sorry, it is what it is. And I don't think that's the right call, but somebody must have.
I wish I could ask.
Yeah, wouldn't get an answer. Why did you
think that was a good idea? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Hey, why didn't you just delay it? No. Yeah, that question probably won't be answered. Assassin, here's a question for the... Oh, no. Sony ponies here in the chat. If Spider-Man 2 or Final Fantasy 16 were announced to be a lock 30 FPS, would you call out Sony, or will you damage control like you're accusing Colt? All right, Assassin's getting... a little spicy in the chat
here. But they're not. They're 60 frames. Like, why even pose a question? There was that like cartoony looking game that came out that's only 30 on the PS5, but it's from a smaller studio. There's no excuse for Arcane to release this game. They didn't want to release it at 30. They screwed up. So yeah, that's it.
I mean, PlayStation has released next gen only games that have had 60 FPS modes. So there's no precedent for them not to, but Xbox is maybe... I think people are worried that Xbox is setting a precedent that they won't be. And that brings us to our next topic, Colt, is what does this mean for Starfield, baby? Because people are already... They're ready. They're ready to get that bombshell drop that, hey, guess what? Starfield, only quality mode, only 30 FPS on consoles. Sorry, gamers. So, again, the Starfield is the most highly anticipated release from Xbox. It's clearly had a massive delay to ensure polish, to ensure the experience is what people want it to be, and they're kind of touting this as the biggest game ever for Bethesda. You know, whether that's fair or not, that's kind of how Starfield is positioned right now. So people, given the Redfall news, which again, we talked about this, I thought Redfall was a easy locked 60 for sure. And now that that's not 60, it's led people to say, all right, well, what's Starfield going to be? So Colt, will Starfield launch with a performance mode in your eyes, or should we mentally prepare for 30 on our Xbox Series X with Starfield?
This is so difficult because I believe the game will have a 60 frames mode. So there's a couple of categories we need to break into. Number one, Starfield is not made by Arcane. It's not in Unreal Engine 4, and it's not the same type of game. Okay, it's in Creation Engine 2, which is a massively improved version of the game that was built for Fallout 4 and let's say Skyrim, because those are the Fallout 3 is Gamebryo, which transformed into something called Creation Engine, which made Skyrim. Skyrim evolved into what is they made for Fallout 4. And I have to say that because what they do is they take everything they did in Skyrim and they take like half of that and they improve the other half and make what is possible in Fallout 4. Starfield is leaps and bounds better looking than Fallout 4 by a long shot. By almost 10 times better. The character models alone, the main characters, if you go talk to Piper or your main character in Fallout 4, they look so degraded compared to what we've seen in Starfield. So they're massive improvements. Todd Howard has said many times to Lex Friedman and to Ryan McCaffrey from IGN that he likes 30 frames. He likes to boost up the visuals. And the guy has like a $9 million PC at home, right? So that's kind of weird. Also, there are CPU loads that are on a game like Starfield where you could walk into a room and throw a grenade and all of the cups and items would blow off of the shelves or off the desk.
A lot of all physics processing, which is
which is all on the CPU. That is one of the reasons why Digital Foundry believes the game will be at 30. Also, they have shown everything up to this point except for the last trailer at 30 FPS. The last trailer that dropped while I was flying home from the Redfall event was 60 frames. Except for the time when Todd Howard was talking and the gameplay was over his shoulder. That was all shot with a camera at 30 frames or 24 frames. So we don't know what that gameplay was, but the opening trailer was all at 60 frames for the first time. So it's really hard to say if Starfield will have a performance mode, but I think it will. It's really difficult for me to nail that down. Also, you've got a console that is 2 to 4 times more powerful than the Xbox One and Xbox One X. And Fallout 4, with a mod before they even enhance it, runs at 60 FPS at 4K. So I don't know. There's a lot of math.
We are coming to a turning point in game development right now. And there are a lot of conversations happening. And I've had developers reach out to me privately about these, developments to add context, throw in their 2 cents about what's going on. And there's going to be this increasing conversation where you target performance and fidelity, or you target features and you target systems. Because at a certain point, the systems, like you said, will outweigh the fidelity. And a lot of the more complicated rendering isn't just your GPU. It is the CPU side of things, and we already know what the CPU capabilities of most hardware is right now. So developers, when you are talking about ideas for what's next in a game and what you want to do, the visual fidelity is less exciting for a lot of developers. A lot of developers aren't really excited about, the visual possibilities of the current gen, but they're excited about what you can do with physics. And so you're going to have some trade-offs when it comes to how your game looks and how your game performs. And we look at Starfield and we have Todd Howard saying things like, I'm cool with 30 FPS. Again, I'm not trying to doom. I'm just trying to be honest with myself and what this might be. That kind of sets the precedent, in this case at least, that Starfield could be 30. Starfield could be 30 FPS. Maybe they're actively working on trying to get a 60 FPS mode. and maybe it gets to the point where, like Redfall, they can't swing it, and they say, all right, Starfield it's 30 FPS. Or maybe they'll do a Plague Tale Requiem situation where if you have VRR and like 120 FPS or 120 hertz display, then you can get 40.
No.
But
no, that doesn't work. I think it's actually worse. I'd rather have it locked at 30 than have a VRR mode at 40, because then you get the illusion of 60 for brief moments, and it all falls apart on a great VRR display, and it doesn't work for me. So
I want 60. I want to believe that they're going to pull a 60 FPS mode. But considering
I mean, what about Starfield in its presentation tells you it's too demanding to run at 60?
They keep talking about the scope
problem, right?
They keep talking about the scope and the scale and the size. So
it's all compartmentalized. It's all compartmentalized, where when you go to the big city hub, that's one box rendered world that you load in from a loading screen. It's much on Creation Engine, it's much like we've experienced for the past 12 to 15 years. So what about that tells you that it's not going to be able to run at 60 FPS on a brand new console with RDNA 2, a Zen 2 processor? Like, it doesn't add up. And even Digital Foundry's like, we think it might be 30. I'm like, you guys know this hardware better than anybody. And you've shown us for years hardware in a PC that is equivalent to a Series X running anything at 60. So other than remember when you said the but, where it's like, oh, this is really great, but, and I feel like a lot of people say, well, Starfield is going to be really great, but it's an Xbox game, so it's going to run at 30. That's where I'm kind of like, not everything's quite adding up, but I'm still not 100% on the 60 frames performance mode.
Like we all want it. I want a 60 FPS mode, but especially after this Redfall development, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about Starfield hitting 60 FPS, because Starfield, in a lot lot of ways, they're talking about.
You already said it wasn't the hardware. You already said it wasn't the hardware. So what is it? Are you going to say, man, Arcane's sins are going to pass over to Bethesda Softworks? Arcane couldn't do it, so Bethesda Softworks can't do it either. Why? Oh, because they're part of Xbox. We even find ourselves falling into the same thing. Oh, it's an Xbox, so it's Murphy's Law. Whatever bad could happen will happen, and without any true reasoning.
Well, we have the Creation Engine, which Bethesda, again, there's no precedent for Bethesda launching their games at 60. They do
on PC, but the
PC.
Creation Engine actually is stuck at it can't go over 60. It's a limitation with the physics tied to the frame rate that you have to do heavy modding to get the game to run over 60 FPS on PC, because the engine of the Creation Engine that's why it's FPS boosted, because the physics and the frame rate are tied together, and you can double that on the Xbox One or Series X with FPS boost. So
that's something a lot of people don't understand too, is frame rate for certain games can break the physics, can break the entire foundation of the game. When I talked to Jason Ronald about Dark Souls 3 FPS boost, they had to go in region by region and move all these sliders and adjust all these parameters to get it to work, because just cranking up the frame rate completely broke the game. And that's what can happen as well. So Creation Engine, as you touch on, with that 60 FPS cap, there's a reason. That 60 FPS cap is keeping everything contained in this bubble. And once you go out of that, things are just falling all over the place. Things are falling through the map. Entire systems are breaking. So again, we haven't seen Starfield at 60 yet. We're going to get the gameplay showcase in June. June's going to be the deciding factor. One thing that Xbox doesn't do that PlayStation and Nintendo often do is they demo their games on Xbox hardware. That's a criticism from a lot of fans. A lot of fans want to see the games running on the Xbox Series X and S. They lean towards PC, which isn't that weird. But when you compare it directly to Xbox and PlayStation, who almost exclusively do PlayStation hardware.
I mean, they don't have a PC.
A lot of their games, again, it's easier.
When Forza Motorsport, when Turn 10 shows Forza Motorsport running at a dynamic or a 4K 60 with ray tracing on track, they showed that on PC. But like I said, when that comes out on Series X, you won't be able to tell the difference from the footage they showed, because they put the dev kit, or the PC dev kit, because they have PC dev kits and then they have a console dev kit.
I'm just talking about, like,
They
from a fan perspective. It doesn't, like, the PC thing, like, for the hardcore in the space, they can quantify, like, oh, it looks like this on PC.
Yeah, they need to say that.
Maybe it'll look like this on Xbox. But for people who've bought the Xbox console, that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. And we're seeing a lot of cases like Redfall where what they showed on PC is not indicative of what the game will be on console, especially on the frame rate side. So I think that's, again, they're trying to be everywhere. They're trying to appeal to a PC audience. They're trying to appeal to a mobile audience. And that, I think, a lot of, as we've seen this week, that's frustrated a lot of the console players who feel like, I've seen people say that they feel like Xbox doesn't even care about the console anymore. It's just this weird side thing that they have. And I don't think that's how they feel, but...
And Phil's been very open and transparent about how they're further behind with the PC audience than they are anything else.
Yeah,
and
they're
in fact,
desperately
they haven't
trying
delivered
to...
there. And there are more people on PC to pull in. And so Xbox is looking at why we're not tapping properly into this, and they're pushing hard with the PC games. But I don't like that they put out like Aura History Untold, even though I'll never play it. They're putting out they allowed the Darktide team to put out the game on PC and then wait for the Xbox version. Oh, we're having problems with the game. It's not running very well on PC and it's not good on console. So we're just going to release it on PC first. And I think Xbox just said, look, we partnered with you as a console exclusive, as an Xbox exclusive for timed exclusivity. Just wait. Like, shouldn't Xbox be able to say that? But I feel like they're like, oh yeah, we really owe the PC guys as well. And I don't like those optics as a console gaming fan.
Xbox is trying to be everywhere, and I feel like that's to their detriment almost at this point, because I feel like they're spread too thin. I will say the reality of getting a gameplay presentation together is difficult. It takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of resources to get that going. So I understand that it's probably easier with a lot of these games being developed on PC to have a PC demo of the game ready to go over a console demo. A lot of people want to see gameplay from Xbox. A lot of people have criticized Xbox for not showing enough gameplay. So if you can get the PC gameplay together first and that's easier, then okay, cool. That gives you some gameplay. But on the flip side, your console audience, which they've invested in the ecosystem by buying a box, your console audience is probably going to be the way more likely than PC to be subscribed to Game Pass. That's statistically a fact. They are struggling to get people on PC Game Pass, and the attach rate, especially with new players on the console with Xbox Game Pass, is incredibly high. So for you not to leverage that in your marketing, it's a little bit weird, in my opinion. It's a little bit strange, and I don't understand that. I guess that's 100% of the time the case with Xbox. Halo Infinite, Forza, Redfall, Starfield. When's the last time we saw a game that said running on Xbox Series X from first party at a showcase? Can you? I'm asking seriously. I can't think.
I don't think they did. I don't think they have.
Have they done that yet? They have to have done that yet.
For Forza Motorsport,
Hellblade 2 was in engine, right?
Gameplay is indicative of Xbox Series X. Hold on, I could look it up. But they said something that was like that it was running on PC, but it was set at the Xbox Series X settings. Let me see if I can find it really quick. But go ahead.
So it's a deliberate choice that they're making. And I think for the console players, again, which I'm a console heathen, I'll say it loud and proud, but I understand that the console space isolated is only a small percentage of what gaming is right now. The PC audience is huge. The mobile audience is absolutely massive. So the console dedicated audience is only a small percentage. But that being said, the console audience in a lot of ways is probably your most engaged. Because as we touched on, you're trying to push a subscription service. You have Xbox Game Pass, you have Xbox Live Gold. Those are recurring revenue streams on the console side of your business, where the PC side, you don't need Gold. A lot of PC people are not subscribing to Xbox Game Pass. You're porting your games to Steam, which means you have to give Steam a cut. So the PC audience, while they are going out of their way to, connect with them, which I think is important. I think that's very important to the future of the Xbox business. You're making less money off the PC. You're working harder and you're making less money. And so that's why I think a lot of the console players right now are especially just tired of the Xbox ecosystem in some ways. I don't know. how you feel about all that.
Well, I mean, I made that graphic that shows the Xbox platform, and console is like, a sixth of what is on offer for Xbox first party games, because really it should come down to the games. Like, do you like the games? Do you want to play the games?
Yeah.
And you can play them on an Xbox One via cloud console streaming, or you can play them on a Series S and X, but you also have tablets. I don't have my Logitech G Cloud in here. You have like these handhelds you can use. You have laptops. You have PC. You have an old PC that could run it through a browser on cloud. You're on a beast PC or a decent PC. Like, there's lots of places you can play games. But the Xbox name used to mean the console. And the problem with the core audience is they are, some 25 million that are on Xbox Series S and X. And where you can speculate that Phil and the team have pushed most of the X stock over to xCloud, because let's be honest, in 10 years, we may not think of consoles like we used to. We may think of consoles like we did our favorite CD player in 10 to 15 years. And that future is coming to PlayStation and Xbox and maybe even Nintendo not long after.
Yeah, the reality is the idea of a console exclusive is becoming more and more ethereal. Like 10 years from now, it's going to be really interesting to see what the big three, quote unquote, look like, because people like PlayStation and Xbox are realizing that you have to meet people where they are. At the end of the day, there's a huge audience of people who will not come to you. No matter what you're doing, a huge percentage of people won't go to where you are. And that's why we see Xbox leaning into PC releases. That's why we see PlayStation looking at that and saying, oh, they're making money, we should do the same. And that's why we have Naughty Dog announcing that they're going to have a dedicated in-house PC development team, so that because I think that is pretty much guaranteeing day and date releases down the road. And that's just the future that we're moving towards. I don't think it's bad. I definitely don't think it's bad that more people will be able to play these games, because again, the reason we all talk about video games is because we like the games, the frame rate, how much revenue a platform makes, like that sort of stuff is interesting from an industry perspective and what it could mean. But that's not the most exciting thing about talking about video games. It's boring.
No, I mean, it's all part of business talk that if you're on a podcast, if you're listening to a podcast, you want to hear about that stuff. But yeah, I just can't help but think that future is just eventually going to make its way in. And I come from a background where I loved my Walkman. I loved my Discman. I loved my in-dash CD player.
Yeah, boy.
I loved all that stuff.
I used to have a fat binder, a binder this fat with 300 discs in it in the backseat of my car, baby. Oh,
yeah, I mean,
what a
I
time
had
to
the
be
Case
alive.
Logic. The Case Logic had the rubber case, and it had the snap open and everything accordioned out with plastic. We loved that sort of thing, right? And we love consoles. And we'll probably love consoles for the next 10 to 15 years. But there are going to be a lot of people in the world in 15 years or 10 years where their internet speed is up to snuff. The infrastructure is growing exponentially. And you may not want to hear it now, but if somebody told you, oh, you and I are big music fans, right? And I'm not going to talk about music. I'm going to say this. I want you to think about video games while I say this, okay? If somebody would have told you 10 years ago, Miles, that you're not going to mess with CDs, you were going to stream all your music, you weren't going to own any of it, you're going to have it all on demand, like, would you have been mad, or you've been like, that kind of sounds cool, or you've been like, no way, I'll never, like, what would you have thought, Miles?
Maybe more than 10 years ago, because I think we've been like digital.
Yeah, I think it is more 10.
But
more than 10 years
back
ago.
when I was
I've been doing
sitting on the bus with my
20 years ago,
my 60-second anti-skip Walkman. Back on those days.
Oh, geez, that was nice.
When I was going to school, like if you had told me that we'd be moving beyond that, because I remember when compact discs were a thing, and people were like, "Whoa, this is so much nicer than my cassette tapes or my vinyl," and that was this big transformational way to listen to music. And you could just skip the song, dude. You didn't have to fast forward. You could just skip the song, man. That was a game changer. And then technology moves so fast that now we look at CDs and go, ugh, I haven't used the disc drive on my Xbox Series X, Colt. I haven't put a single disc in there. I have games that I own and I look at and think about like putting in, but then I say, ew, I'm not going to go get up and put a disc in. What year is this? So It'll be really interesting to see what that all looks like in 10 more years.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about this streaming thing, and I made a video like 6 years ago. What if instead of buying a $300 or $500 console, what if PlayStation says, we're all on demand, and you connect your controller to a TV? I said this like on this video I was playing. It was when Plants vs. Zombies 2 came out. So this is how old I was thinking about this concept. I did a short video and I said, what if you paid $500 or $300 a year, I think I said, and you have access to every game that comes to PlayStation? Every game. Because instead of buying the console, you just paid $300 a year and you got a controller, which is kind of like Stadia, which flopped on its butt. But think about it. PlayStation gets like 150, 300 games per year that come to the platform. All of them. First party, third party, indies, you name it. That all of them, because you bought your subscription to PlayStation, you got every game on demand. So when Dead Island 2 comes out next week, you're like, oh yeah, I've been paying for PlayStation. So you grab your DualSense 5, you turn it on with your TV, and you're streaming the game at really high fidelity on demand. You don't have to buy them because you're paying for PlayStation. And I didn't get many comments back. That video got like 100 views, but people were like, oh man, that's kind of a crazy concept, because right now we're like on demand with cloud and Game Pass, which is a very limited amount of games. But in the future, like, you wouldn't miss a console if you could play all the games and they just felt native, which they will. They definitely will.
Exactly. So, that's what we're moving towards, is that convenience. Once we hit that threshold where the experience is good enough for most players, like me, I used to buy Blu-rays exclusively because I preferred the visual fidelity, the quality. And then when streaming was early on, you could see a lot more artifacting. I remember I love horror movies. Watching horror movies on early Netflix was bad because you would see the artifacting around dark scenes really, really aggressively.
Big chunks of pixels.
Yeah, it's still there in some ways, but now it's good enough to where it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to run out and buy a Blu-ray when I can just watch it on demand. It's just easier, and that convenience outweighs everything for the average person. If you can give them an experience that's convenient, where not only do they not have to download a game, they don't even have to buy a game, they can just access this library and stream it, that is going to pull in way more people to gaming. And that's going to
how much do you spend a year on video games, on just the games?
Oh God, I did my taxes, thousands of dollars. I spent thousands. Yes. I did my taxes.
I think back then I said I buy about $300 worth of games every year, but now I buy a lot more because I have more platforms and I game a lot more now that I cover more content. So what you spent over 1,000 on games last year?
Yeah, I think it was $1,800 $1,800
wow.
Between Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch.
So if let's say that the xCloud was it doubled in its quality when you play, like it looks twice as nice. Like if Xbox said, hey, for $300 a year, you can play all the games that come to Xbox, regardless if they're anything that launches on Xbox, you'll have on-demand access to. Like, imagine that. And people are like, that business model might not work, but maybe people wouldn't want to. Maybe it's too high of a threshold. But you spend $500 on a console and it lasts 4 or 5 years before they make a new one. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, things are going to shift, and that's like Game Pass has been this really interesting evolution of how we engage with games, how we, like, I hate this word, consume video games. And so it'll be really interesting to see more and more people lean into that. And as soon as Xbox starts supporting your library, so you'll be able to stream your library that you own to the cloud, I think that'll be another huge moment, because it's not only the stuff that's limited to Xbox Game Pass, but it'll be everything that you own. And that'll be a huge shift as well. And again, for me right now, like, cloud gaming is great. There are some latency concerns for me. That's my biggest issue. I think visual fidelity is there, but there's, it doesn't feel 100% native. And as someone who has played native games for decades, I can feel it. Maybe a casual player who doesn't play all that often, it's not a big deal. It's not necessarily a game-breaking thing for them. But for me right now, it's still like I have to pick and choose the types of games that I play. First-person shooters, for example, it's tough. It's tough to sell me on the cloud gaming unless that is like perfect, pristine conditions.
Yeah. But I mean, that was a long segue away from how things are going to change and how Xbox they do need to put way more effort and marketing and thought into their console gamers for sure. It's a major problem.
Yeah, and again, maybe this is again, I'm a console heathen, so I'm going to try to word this as carefully as I possibly can. You know, we've had people talk about how Xbox maybe doesn't care about the console, and I don't think that that's true. I think they still do care about the console, but as they look at their data, as the areas that they're growing and can grow, maybe it shows that PC and mobile is just a much better opportunity for them. And so right now in this current moment, that's where they're putting all of their resources. We know they're preferring to have Xbox Series X's go into the cloud as opposed to go in-store shelves. And so people are looking at the Xbox brand and saying, all right, well, you're being outsold 2-1 to PlayStation, but they're not really putting Xboxes in stores for people to buy because they're focusing on the cloud. And we know they're focusing a lot of efforts in PC Game Pass. They're putting a lot of marketing dollars into like partnerships with Riot, as we've seen with Redfall, as we've seen with Darktide. They want that PC launch. They want that PC launch as soon as possible with Game Pass. So, yeah, maybe they are. You know, maybe the times are changing. And I'm not here to say that the box is going away. I think there still will be a console box, but I think we're in a transitional period where they are understanding that they need to be more places, and console's not how they grow, and that's hurts to say as a console heathen.
Well, I don't know. Console is where they're growing. The Xbox Series S and X are outpacing Xbox One and 360. They're just
they were. We haven't heard an update recently.
Well, that wasn't that long ago, was it? When they said
it's been a little while since they shared an official update.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's true officially, but VG Charts tries to stay as close as possible. I've talked to the head of VG Charts quite a bit. Very cool guy. They do their best to get the closest guesstimate, an educated guesstimate of where Xbox is sitting. But according to them, they're outpacing the old consoles. Gaming is bigger than ever. Even console gaming is bigger than ever because PlayStation is seeing the 5 do historical numbers, and the Switch is doing really great. And the Xbox, the best part about the Xbox is it's selling really, really well, and you don't have to have one. You have to remember that when we talk about the Xbox console. They say, hey, we're putting out this amazing game called Starfield. It's going to be a tentpole franchise from Bethesda Softworks, and people are like, oh, I'll just play it on PC, or I'll play it on cloud, I'll play it on a laptop, or I'll play it on an Xbox Series X or whatever, right? It's a difference with the Nintendo. If you want to play Tears of the Kingdom, what do you buy?
You got to buy a Switch, baby.
You have to buy a Switch. You have to. If you want to play Final Fantasy 16, what do you buy? Are you gonna? Well, I'll play it on PC. No, it's only
not
on
anytime
PlayStation.
Soon.
Not anytime soon. So you have to buy it. I want to play PlayStation's biggest game, Spider-Man 2. You have to buy a PlayStation. That requisite is a big thing for sales moving forward. And if Xbox did that, would they have more sales? Yes. Would they be beating PlayStation? Not yet, because they have yet to deliver their first-party output that is coming this year and next year and the year after. That's when you get all the stuff they promised. All those games that where before, remember I said at the beginning of the show, they were just a Forza, Halo, and Gears set of studios, and that's all they had. What a big difference. And 2023, as much as we'll gripe about Redfall, 2023 is still looking like a top-tier experience. Redfall, Starfield, Minecraft Legends. You've got Lies of P coming into Game Pass. Stalker 2 might make it this year. In fact, there's rumors that Hellblade Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2, might be coming out this year as well. And then the AMK stuff's going to just dump truck in. It's going to be huge. No matter if Redfall's at 30 frames, it's going to be huge for Xbox.
Yeah.
You should be excited.
Overall, 2023 it's looking like one of the best years ever for video games. So for me, it's hard to sit on a show and just rag on Xbox the entire time, because there's a lot of stuff to play, even outside of Xbox. But I understand for the people engaged with, let's say you only have an Xbox. And I'll use some examples from my Discord. We have the Xbox Chaturdays Discord, and I've had people this week kind of talk about like having regrets about buying an Xbox Series X. They feel like they should have bought a PlayStation 5 because they prefer to play on console, and it seems like PlayStation cares more about the console experience than Xbox. And you look at that, you look at someone saying that, that's not a fanboy. That's not someone throwing around
That's
FUD.
all they have right now. That's all they have.
That's an Xbox fan that feels like as someone who prefers to play on console, that they're not getting the best experience. And I don't think that's unfair for that person to say. I don't think it's unfair that someone shares that thought. And that's kind of the situation that Xbox finds them in right now, is that they're a lot of places. They want to be a lot of places. And for the core fans, that's leading to a bit of frustration. And it's tough. It's tough because you look at the future, you look at the first party output. Like you said, I'm still incredibly excited about the future of Xbox Game Studios because of games like Hellblade, because of games like Everwild, because of what we've seen with recent examples like Grounded and Sea of Thieves. There shows a lot of potential for what could happen. And as someone who is a fan of video games, the games themselves, I'm really excited about what these teams can deliver on. And so it's hard for me to be super, jaded about Xbox. But that being said, I understand that if Xbox is really trying to close the gap between third place and first place, that they do have a lot of work, and they do need to change a lot of things, and they do need to be way more consistent with how they communicate to their audience, because PlayStation and Nintendo fumble. They fumble. They make bad moves from an optics perspective, from a consumer standpoint. But people are so much faster to forgive and forget PlayStation and Nintendo. And some people say, oh, it's media bias or whatever it is. But I think the hard truth is PlayStation and Nintendo can turn around and put out a must-play game right after that. And then all is forgiven. And the Xbox hasn't been doing that consistently enough. I'm not saying the Xbox doesn't have great games, because they do. They do have a lot of great games. But we've talked about multiple times on the show that video games are one of the most important things about this entire industry moving forward. Xbox, in a lot of ways, isn't on the same level consistently, and that's why every time Xbox fumbles, we have this long, lengthy conversation about the history of the Xbox brand and where they've messed up and blah blah blah, and it's just exhausting.
I mean, perception is one of the major driving forces that keeps people thinking that Xbox is in the dumpster or Xbox is having problems. And we've talked about the things they need to fix, but their first party output, as Hargeet Chani points out, I forgot to mention, we started the year with Hi-Fi Rush, and I played all the way through that game. Game's amazing. So you got Hi-Fi Rush, Ghostwire Tokyo made it to Xbox, and it got a slightly better review score than the PlayStation 1 because a full-fledged content feature release. But then you've got those other games that I talked about, and then, like you said, there's all of the multiplats that will also be on the Xbox console as well. The perception that Xbox games are worse than PlayStation is kind of a ridiculous lie, because as I've looked at the first party output from PlayStation and Xbox, full stop on OpenCritic, the first party studios at Xbox have been slightly above the PlayStation. Like 1% above, which you won't believe it until I put out an updated graphic with Ghostwire Tokyo and Minecraft Legends. It dropped the Xbox down, and they're still 1% above PlayStation's first-party output in quality of reviews from the industry.
Their games review well. Like,
they really well.
Anyone saying that Xbox games are bad isn't really looking at the overall context of what's going on, and so there's still a lot to be excited about, and it's important that we highlight the good. But
let me say, since you're showing Sea of Thieves, in the past, let's see, what would be 18 to now, in the past 5 years, the only bad games on Xbox are Sea of Thieves and from first party, because now Undead Labs is part. Undead Labs, State of Decay 2, and Sea of Thieves are their worst rated games on the platform. And Sea of Thieves, if they would have waited one more year, Sea of Thieves would have been Sea of Thieves is awesome now.
Sea of Thieves is one of the best games that Xbox has put out and supported. And it is their North Star of how to do ongoing
How
games.
many people have played it? Like 20 million or something?
It's over 30 million at this point.
Oh my gosh. And it is super successful. But everyone looks at it back in April of 2018, and that's the Sea of Thieves. That's all they think of, and they won't get past that. But
that's Metacritic
is their worst game. I'm not using. I use OpenCritic because then it takes on the game as it is, reviewed from all platforms and all places. Like Rare made it an exceptional game of Sea of Thieves. I may not love it as much as I love other games, but if Sea of Thieves is the lowest and it is what it is, like Xbox games are really, really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of great Xbox games. And that's the thing that Xbox is struggling to do that I think PlayStation and Nintendo do objectively better is have a moment where the entire world is looking at one release from them.
Yes.
And the last time we had that was Halo Infinite. And so they have the entire world looking at Halo Infinite, and then it's a negative PR beat for months afterwards. Yep. And that's, again, that's not console wars. That's not fanboy noise. That's the reality is.
Oh, everybody knows
Xbox had their moment, and they fumbled it in a huge way, in ways that Nintendo's not going to fumble Tears of the Kingdom. Like, that's not going to be a fumble launch.
No, Nintendo never fumbles a game. And Jeremiah says, Colt, the difference is Sony's releasing AAA games. All good Xbox games have been smaller games. He's absolutely right. There are double the AAA games from PlayStation that there are of Xbox. But, like, what do you want? Do you want AAA? It's all up to preference. Do you want AAA or do you want higher rated? And, you know, you can have both. And PlayStation also has both, but you know, I've played lots of AAA games that I thought were not very good at all. I've played lots of smaller games that are absolutely Grounded is one of the best games that came out in 2022. Like, full stop. Yeah. One of the most creative and amazing and emotionally impactful and immersive, fantastic. You know, Grounded is amazing. And it is a very small game for 12 people. Yeah, so perception is a heck of a drug for sure.
So yeah, that's guilty of it. Exactly. The reality is it's not doom and gloom for Xbox, and I don't think the Xbox brand is going to implode or collapse. Like, we have these pendulum shifts back and forth between Xbox and PlayStation. People are saying, "Oh, PlayStation has nothing this year, so they're doomed." But the hard truth when we talk about the industry as a whole and not Xbox in an isolated bubble is that the reason that people are more critical of them is that they have a lot of inconsistencies with their delivery and their messaging. They can overpromise, Scalebound, Phantom Dust, Minecraft Super Duper Graphics Pack, Xbox UI, Xbox Game DVR. They overpromise and underdeliver a lot. And that's, again, Xbox is my preferred platform. I play on it the most. I play it on every single day. But that's the truth. And people, I don't know, people are getting frustrated, I think. But
yeah, I don't blame them. I mean, I say the perception thing, but yeah, I hear it. I hear you. I feel the same way. I want Xbox to have a game without the asterisks at the end, you know?
Yeah, and so for me,
I don't want to say Starfield's amazing, but it runs at 30 or something. I don't want that to happen at all.
I'm in a very privileged position, so if somebody's not delivering for me, I can just temporarily go somewhere else. I have the PS5, I have a Switch, I have a PC. If Xbox isn't delivering for me, then I just play something else. There's no shortage of games to play. But there are people who exclusively play on Xbox. That's their primary platform. And I think those people are the most frustrated right now. So Colt, before we wrap up this show, I'm going to get to a community Q&A from our lovely folks in the Xbox Chaturdays Discord. We got Monkey versus Tramps, who says, do you think that perhaps due to the lack of first-party titles during 2022, this could have had an effect on the unfinished version of Redfall, as in Xbox feels they need to release first-party games within a certain time period, even if they are unfinished, to make up for the lack of first-party content from 2022? Colt, do you think there's any truth or possibility to that idea?
No. I think Xbox is now saying it's not worth it. Delay the game and have it at its best. But my speculation is that Arcane went in the 9th inning and told Xbox, look, we're going to have to either delay the game or do 30 FPS. And they were so late into accountability is such a major problem. Xbox should have been keeping up with them, or maybe the last big check-in, everything was going great, and then they ran into some really bad bug that was a bad design decision, and Redfall is in this situation because I think Xbox is solely responsible for, in the most positive way, Redfall and Starfield would have released under the old Bethesda and ZeniMax. because they put out their games. I think Xbox was the one that said, no, we're not doing this. Take an extra year, get it right. You guys owe yourself, because I'm a creator. I create videos. I'm an illustrator. I'm a graphic designer. When I create something, I don't want anyone to see it until it is looking fire. And I will not release something if it doesn't look really great, because then people will say, well, that guy's not very good. And these developers spent 5-8 years on these games. Why in the world would you wait till the last minute and go, it's good enough, just put it out? And they don't want that. It's the publishers that put the pressure on. And I want that to stop.
Yeah. So again, I don't know that that's the truth, because clearly they were willing to go a full year without a big game. So clearly they're not adverse to delaying stuff. And I agree. I think old Bethesda would have just shipped these games. I think that's the reality. And Xbox wants to make sure that, like we talked about, that their games are better because they're under Xbox Game Studios. But clearly in this case, something came up where there was some conflict behind the scenes that made it so 60 FPS is going to be delayed. And again, I don't know what the reality is as to why they're not unwilling to delay it again, if they know this mode is coming at a later date. Outside of scheduling conflicts. So I don't know. I don't know that that's the case. It could have been a factor, because again, much like we talked about, optics is a big problem. But I think the glowing release of Hi-Fi Rush kind of bought them a little time. So I don't think that they necessarily had to be like, oh, we got to get Redfall out right this minute right now. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, Colt.
Well, we don't know everything.
Exactly.
Next question.
We're just here to ramble. All right. Well, that's gonna do it. We're gonna wrap it up here.
Oh, okay.
Huge shout out to everyone who tuned in live. Huge shout out to everyone who watches or listens after the fact. Really appreciate all of you joining this conversation. I know it's been a heated week for Xbox fans. I know there's been a lot of passionate takes. But Colt, I appreciate you jumping on. Appreciate you diving into this with me. A lot to unpack, and I appreciate you. So one more time for the people joining us, where can they find you, my dude?
Yeah, it's Colt Eastwood, one word. A lot of people split it into my first and last name, Colt Eastwood, but no, it's Colt Eastwood, one word, at Twitter, at Colt Eastwood. And then on YouTube, you can find me at Colt Eastwood, where I try and make a video every week, but I have my podcast that I'm doing on Monday. And I don't want to talk about Redfall. I've been on Gaz's show, Infinite Umbra's show, and your show, and I think we've covered it pretty much. But like I said, 2023 is still a killer year for Xbox, regardless of this setback. I'm really excited, and don't let people ruin your excitement. If you're hyped about something, or you think you're going to enjoy it, if something looks like something you'll like, man, have some fun, man. There's too much to be excited about. It'll be all right.
Thank you. I wanted to start the show with something positive, and I was hoping to end the show with something positive as well. A nice little, positivity sandwich here with a lot of meat in the middle, because that's true. Again, something that happens a lot online is people try to say that, okay, you shouldn't be excited about this because of X, Y, and Z. But the reality is, if you're excited about a video game, just be excited about it. Evil Dead the game is my prime example. Nobody really cared about Evil Dead the game, but I was loving it. I got 5 days of playtime in that, and despite everyone saying...
Did I give you a hard time about liking Evil Dead? Did I make fun of you?
I don't know if you did. But again, it's niche. I know it's niche. It's niche as hell.
I don't make fun of people for liking something. If they like a Nintendo game or whatever, I don't. So it's such a dumb thing to say. Why are you excited for that mid game? Oh my gosh, it's so dumb.
720p.
It's got to be the dumbest thing to do. Like if I see someone eating a tuna fish sandwich, I'm not going to knock it out of their hands because I think they're gross.
Yeah.
But anyway, lots to be excited about. It's going to be great. And then we are like 2 months away from the big showcase and the Starfield Direct. And then that's when we'll know if it's 60 frames or not. And if that Starfield Direct comes up and it's 30, I'm going to go like...
Get ready for another podcast gauntlet, bro, of, oh my God, Starfield 30 FPS. What is Xbox going to do? Is Xbox doomed? What does this mean for Hellblade 2?
It's Xbox's fault. Yep.
But I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone who engages, and I do my best to try to make it constructive, try to talk about the realities of everything, despite the, despite the drama and the spicy takes. So appreciate all of you. Have an amazing weekend. Have an amazing week, and we will catch you next Saturday. Peace.
See ya.